And we are live.
All right, good morning, everyone. We'll call to order this March's Planning Committee. Clerk, can you confirm that the roll has been taken?
Through the chair, roll has been taken.
Excellent. Members of the committee, any conflict of interest to declare? Seeing none, we'll move forward. We do have a delegation for item 6.1.1, so that will automatically be separated. Would anybody like to call for a separation of the minutes? Seeing none, we'll now call the votes on all items not separated. And clerk, if you could read off what we're voting on right now.
The items subject to the vote are the minutes from the January Planning Committee. And Councillor, can I get a mover and seconder for?
Oh, sorry. I guess I'll need to move. Mayor Davis, seconded by Councillor Martin.
And the minutes carry on a recorded vote of 5-0. Those voting in favor, 6-0. Those voting in favor, Mayor Davis, Councillor Sicoli, Celeste, Martin, Carpenter, and Van Tilburg.
Very good. Moving forward, we do have one statutory public meeting today. That this public meeting is held in accordance with the provisions of the Planning Act. The purpose of this hearing is to discuss the planning application and to hear from the public either in support or against the application. At the end of each public meeting, the committee will pass on a recommendation which will be generally considered by council. The name of anyone who wants to speak will be noted in the meeting minutes. Anyone wishing notice of any further proceedings, I'm asking that you leave your name and contact information with the clerk's department. The applicant will speak first, followed by municipal staff, and then the public. Each person will have up to 10 minutes to speak, inclusive of questions from the committee. The applicant will then have 5 minutes at the end to provide clarifications to any questions that do arise. As a reminder, the following rules of decorum as set forth in the city's bylaw do apply. No person shall display any sign, banner, or placard in the meeting room other than materials that, in the opinion of the chair, are legitimate audio-visual aids. All persons present shall use polite and respectful language and shall refrain from the use of language or the making of any gesture that is disrespectful or offensive. All persons addressing committee shall speak only on the subject that we're speaking to today. No person shall applaud participants in debate or engage in conversation or behavior that may disrupt the meeting. In saying all that, we'll move forward. So we have item 4.1, which is an information report regarding a draft plan of condominium application for 1 and 2 Melrose Place. So I'll now call up the applicant or the agent to the applicant to speak to. Mayor Davis.
Madam Chair, I have a point of order.
Okay.
My question, why are we having a statutory public hearing in a matter that we're not going to be making a decision on? But if I read the resolution correctly, making recommendations, and my concern is usually when you have a statutory public hearing, almost always you have at the same meeting a decision, unless it's deferred. And so my concern is that we'll have people attending today, thinking it's a public hearing where decisions being made, and then it comes back to us at a later date. And they may misunderstand that it's like starting all over from scratch and having to attend again. So I'm concerned about how this has been structured procedurally, and would appreciate the comments from staff, whether this is the appropriate procedure to follow. And what does follow from here? As the second future planning committee meeting, what's that look like? Is it a whole fresh meeting?
Okay, sir, before I rule on the point of order, I'm going to hear comment from staff.
Through you, Chair, Sean House, Senior Project Manager with the City Planning Department. The purpose of this public meeting is to provide information to both Planning Committee and the public on the application that's been submitted to the city. It's a little different than our standard procedure where we would come forward with a recommendation report at the same planning committee. So for this one, we wanted to really hear from the public, so that we would have a chance to draft a recommendation, and more importantly, some of the conditions that would be required if this plan of condominium were to be approved, so that we could tailor those conditions specifically to some of the information we might hear today. So just in summary, a recommendation report would be coming forward at a future planning committee.
So realizing that this is an unorthodox use of the statutory public hearing, I'm going to rule that we proceed with the statutory public hearing in that I don't think there's anything wrong with public engagement. And the more that we know and the more that we hear, the better educated we can be as a council. So I'm going to rule against your point of order and that we move forward with the public hearing. Okay, the applicant can now approach the microphone. Yeah. Whichever one floats your boat. There you go. So push the microphone. Yeah, you'll see a little button there. When it lights up red, you're live and on the air. I'll remind you that you have 10 minutes. Please state your name as well before you get started. You'll have 10 minutes, and that's inclusive of questions from us up here, okay? When you're ready.
I have a point of personal privilege with the chair. I take issue with the chair's comments suggesting that my motion was an attempt to suppress public opinion. It exactly was not that. The position was that the procedure staff has taken, I believe, is not provided by the Planning Act. And in fact, will create the impression with the public that today we're having a public hearing, hearing their views, making a decision, when that's in fact not the case. I think it should be made clear that, one, that was not my intent, and I take serious issue with the chair castigating me in that manner.
I apologize if it came across that way. I did not mean to castigate you, which is a word I'm going to add to my dictionary lookup later today. I did not mean it to come across that way. I'm merely suggesting that I think we should proceed today that there's some people here who are hoping to speak, and I don't think there's anything wrong with us hearing the opinion of the public. It had nothing to do with your opinion of that.
Well, can we make it clear to the public that a decision's not being made today and that there will be a second public meeting, and that it's essential that if they're still concerned that they attend the second public.
Respectfully, Mayor Davis, I think you've made that crystal clear. Is there anyone in the audience here tonight? So I can't say that, can I? We will not be making a decision today. This is merely another avenue for us here at the Planning Committee to hear from the public on this matter. Yeah, we're good to move on. To the applicant, I'm going to start your timer, please.
Good morning. Good morning, Madam Chairman, members of council and staff. My name is Andrew Head from Dryden Smith and Head Planning Consultants. Apologies for my tardiness. We are here today. I'm here with Gabriel Gassabini, who is the owner of the subject property, 1 and 2 Melrose Place. He's here as a delegation as well, and would like to take his turn at speaking to council in a minute. I want to be clear about this application. What we're proposing today is to convert the existing 3-story, 60-unit apartment building from private rental to condominium ownership. No new development is planned for the property. This is not a renoviction. The landowner has no intention of evicting any tenants. You can be assured that the Residential Tenancies Act, RTA, strictly governs how and when evictions can occur, offering substantial protections for existing tenants. The building currently consists of 15 one-bedroom and 2-bedroom rental units. Through this conversion, we aim to create attainable ownership opportunities for individuals in the lower income brackets, helping them enter home ownership, a significant gap in today's market. The proposed condominium will maintain its mix of unit types to cater to the diverse needs of various households and income levels. The conversion will provide affordable housing options through high density living, transit accessibility, and a walkable 15-minute neighborhood. Most importantly, this project offers an opportunity for first-time home buyers to enter the market, something rare in this housing landscape. We held a tenant engagement meeting, which was well attended by residents. We presented the proposal, explained to the Residential Tenancy Act, and addressed questions. By the end of the meeting, we had significant support from the tenants who see the potential for upgrades to the building without fear of displacement. Based on the information provided by the planning justification report and attached appendices, we believe the application is consistent with the the provincial planning statement, the Brantford official plan, and Brantford Brant Housing Stability Plan, as well as the city zoning bylaw. The Brantford official plan and housing stability plan emphasize creating balanced and diverse housing supply. Specifically, policy 3.1B encourages a mix of housing types, styles, tenures, and affordability levels to meet the needs of a growing and diverse population. Policy 3.1D prioritizes the supply of new affordable ownership and rental housing. While Brantford's official plan mandates the creation of 180 new residential units annually through construction or conversion, the distribution is heavily skewed. Only 15% are designated for affordable home ownership, with 85% of the 153 units of the 180 allocated for rental housing, leaving 27 units dedicated for attainable housing. This imbalance limits opportunities for wealth building and socioeconomic flexibility. It is crucial that both the rental and ownership opportunities are equally prioritized to foster a more exclusive community. I reviewed the market listings in March of 2024. Of the 42 available two-bedroom units, only 2 were priced under $350,000, highlighting the severe lack of affordability options. I again looked at the MLS listings, the Brantford real estate data. The benchmark prices for all types of housing was $695,000 in March 2024. Our proposal will sell the units for less than half of this amount, meeting the definition of affordable. Current market conditions, 524 homes are listed in the Brantford area for sale. Only 4.5% of them are priced under $350,000. When we reduced the cap to $300,000, our target price of availability dropped to 2.6%. Construction costs, as reported in the Brantford Expositor on February 1st, have heavily increased since 2020, making affordable housing projects increasingly difficult to fund. The Sheller Lane development, for example, is projected to cost $361,000 per unit. That's excluding land costs. Our conversion project addresses the affordability issues without reliance or taxpayer funding. It aligns with the Brantford Housing Plan, which emphasizes rent-to-own programs, supplemental financing, and other initiatives to support residents in achieving home ownership. The RTA, the tenants will be fully protected under the RTA Section 51 and ensures that the tenants cannot be evicted due to the conversion of condominium ownership. Their rental agreements will remain in place until they choose to relocate or transition to condominium ownership. This condominium conversion aligns with Brantford's commitment to attainable home ownership, long-term property improvements, and tenant protections. The transition will be gradual, with tenants' rights fully safeguarded by the Residential Tenancies Act, ensuring that you cannot be evicted once the conversion is complete. The proposal offers a clear pathway for residential to transition from rental housing into home ownership, a pressing need in this community. We strongly urge the city to support this draft plan of condominium application as a responsible and forward-thinking solution to Brantford's housing challenges. The Brantford Housing Stability Plan highlights the severe affordability crisis in the city. Home ownership is increasingly out of reach for many. With only 28% of households able to afford the average sale price, there is a critical need for more affordable home ownership options to address the growing gap. This conversion is aligned with provincial policies, the Brantford Official Plan, and the Housing Stability Plan. It will provide much-needed entry-level home ownership opportunities, an area currently underserviced by existing initiatives. On a final note, I'd like to remind Council of Gabriel's years of experience and track record as a businessman and a landowner in Brantford that proves his commitment and interest to this city. Thank you for your time and your attention. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much. We do have some questions from the committee, beginning with Councillor Sless.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to the delegation, you indicate that you have no intention of displacing anybody during this transition. What legal assurance are you giving these folks that is so and not just a statement?
Well, in the Landlord Tenancy Act, it actually states in section, I don't know the section off my heart, but it states that through the condo conversion, we're not allowed to. When you modify the building and more than one unit is converted, you legally cannot evict these people because they still are under that rental agreement. In short, the legal terms would be that they're still protected under their lease agreement as signed for when as a rental.
Okay, so if I understand you correctly, then it's not that you don't want to or that you might not, it's that you can't. Is that correct?
We have no intention, there's never been any, ever a mention of converting or evicting people who live there. The intention is to convert it slowly.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Up next, I have Mayor Davis with 2 minutes left.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sorry, your name is, didn't catch it.
Sorry, my name's Andrew Head.
And what are your qualifications, sir?
Well, it's a long list, sir. I've been
you a
an urban
planner
planner,
or you a
I'm
lawyer?
partner at Dryden Smith and Head Planning Consultants. I've sat on the Committee of Adjustment of the City of Kitchener as Vice Chairman. I have graduated, I've been educated in urban planning. I have been I'm the immediate past president for the Waterloo Regional Home Builders Association,
Okay.
and I'm a partner in Dryden Smith and
But you're
Head.
not a lawyer, you're not qualified to give legal advice regarding landlord and tenant matters.
No, I'm not.
Okay. I'm not so concerned about yourself or your client. I'm more concerned about somebody who purchases, if we do a conversion, somebody who purchases a condo and becomes a landlord to the person occupying that unit. And let's say that it's the same person that occupied the unit, the tenant, before the actual conversion. So you're telling us that the new owner of that unit, the condominium unit, they can't evict that tenant.
Under the terms that we have discussed, the process is we're not evicting anybody. If a prospective purchaser buys the condominium unit, he gets it when it's vacant. Once
Okay?
it's vacant, he has the option and his rights to be able to rent it or and because it becomes a condominium now. It's not a rental unit because we're not transitioning any of the renters into the condominium ownership.
With all due respect, sir, I don't think you're listening to me. I mean, that a condominium owner can be a landlord, but they can decide not to occupy the unit. They can decide that they'll just continue to rent it, correct?
Yes, they have the
Okay.
option to rent these
And,
things.
and so what if they change their mind and they decide they want to occupy it? Does that mean they have rights under the Landlord and Tenant Act to then evict the person?
Well, at that time, the tenure and the ownership would have changed and he would have all the rights as a landlord or a tenant at that point. Because the conversion would have been completed and his ownership tenure would be that he is now the landlord and he can
Right.
legally, and then his rights would reset the clock. So because we're still on the old rental clock per se, that stays in line up from my understanding. Again, I'm not a solicitor.
So you're saying that you're indicating then that the new owner of a unit, of the condo unit, they can then evict the person because one, they want to occupy the unit themselves or a member of their family, or they want to renovate the unit.
I think Gabe might be better off to answer this.
I think it's an important question. I'm sure that those who occupy the building want to know black and white what the legal rights are.
Before we continue, we've exceeded our 10 minutes. Can given that there's so many more people to speak, are you putting a motion to extend it?
Well, I am in the interest of full public discussion, hearing everything the public has to say. I would say that why don't we extend this by 10 minutes?
I'll second that.
The speaking opportunities for the public will not be impacted by the additional 10 minutes here, but I do have a mover and a seconder. And so we'll call the vote to add an additional 10 minutes to the applicants speaking.
Just waiting for Counselor Carpenter and Counselor Martin.
It hasn't come up, but mine's a yes.
The motion to waive the rules carries on a recorded vote of 6-0. Those voting in favor, Mayor Davis, Counselor Sepoli, Slats, Martin, Carpenter, and Van Tilburg.
With that, we're resetting the clock and Mayor Davis, you'll have 2 minutes left in this speaking opportunity if you want to continue.
You wish me to call a point of order on that? I will. Let's go ahead. I think it's more important we have the answers to these very important questions. I don't have the time. I'm sure Councillor Carpenter will follow up with the appropriate questions.
And up next, I have Councillor Van Tilburg.
I still want to ask questions though.
Would you like me to put you down for, I just gave you the rest of your 2 minutes. Do you want a second speaking opportunity?
Well, the point of order, I mean, the 4 minutes, this is not a speaking opportunity. This is where we're asking questions, and this 4 minute limit in terms of when we can speak and debate, submit, Madam Chair, does not apply when we're asking questions to the delegation.
Speaking of, we have speaking limits to how long we speak in a row. I've given everybody 2 4-minute speaking opportunities. Okay.
Doesn't apply when you're asking questions. You use your discretion to make sure that, given the available time and who wants to ask questions, that everybody has a shot at it. But the actual 4 minute limit doesn't apply.
I'm gonna go to.
But I'm
Madam
happy
Clerk
if
on
you
the
decide that's what you-
rules of
I wanna-
this particular committee.
Yes.
We have limitless speaking opportunities.
So,
for this.
yeah, through the chair, the 2 minute or the 2 4-minute speaking opportunities is limited to debate. Whereas the 10-minute speaking opportunity for the applicant is inclusive of questions from the committee. It is within your discretion, Madam Chair, to limit the speakers around the table, their speaking opportunities within that 10 minutes, how you want to divide that time up.
So, Madam Chair, I'll do that. I don't want to get into involved procedural debate. I'm happy with whatever decision you want to make, who can speak and who can ask questions. But please put me down for the end. I might want to ask some additional questions.
Okay, so I'm going to continue as I have been at my discretion with 2 4-minute speaking opportunities to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to ask questions, and I'm resetting the 10-minute timer for that purpose. Councillor Van Tilburg.
Thank you, Chair, and you're doing a fantastic job. You held a public meeting in January, is that correct?
That is correct.
And that was in West Grand.
That is correct.
All right, and you had 36 attendees?
I believe so.
How many people are in all your units to get combined?
There's 60 units in total.
60 units total. So just about half. Were the tenants that couldn't attend because of the distance?
Well, we can ask them, right? They were all notified of it and they had the option to attend. It wasn't mandatory.
No,
Right? So
not
some
mandatory.
people would have chose not to attend.
Just that it was a significant distance away from where they live, and I'm wondering if they had transportation there, that was all. All
did
right,
not.
so how many units are actually a new build? A new unit? Like how many, are we gonna have more families accommodated with this transition?
There will be no construction to the building. It is existing as it is. So the standard, the 45 2-bedrooms and 1-bedrooms.
And you're keeping how many units for yourselves?
The intention is to convert the building 100% to condominiums. Gabriel has expressed an interest that he's going to maintain 31 of those to keep control of the building to ensure that it's maintained properly and to his standards.
Right. And so one would assume then that based on the words that have been proposed here, that with Gabriel, any tenants within his units would be secure under the Landlord Tenant Act. Would that be correct? Based on what you've spoken to regarding the present owner?
Yeah, under the Landlord Tenant Act. Yeah, he like, that is the governing body for all the landlords and the tenants, right? So they have.
Correct, but I haven't, I have seen in other condominiums exactly what happens, and as the mayor was alluding to, they do become sold, and they eventually, in a period of time, the existing tenants are evicted in one way or another, and then you own, whether it's the owners themselves or new tenants come in. So we end up with our tenants struggling to find a place. So that's what would be happening with potentially be happening with the other units. You're suggesting that it's affordable, attainable housing. If that's the case, the person buying would have to evict the tenants to enjoy their attainable housing.
Yes, I'm going to turn this over to Gabriel, but the answer is no, they can't in the Landlord Tenant Act. Gabriel?
Do I have permission to answer the question, sir?
Oh, absolutely. That's fine. That's what we are asking.
Thank you. I believe it's the same question that the mayor was asking.
It is.
Okay. So If you convert a building into condominium, there are special laws that come into effect that do not exist under the Landlord Tenant Act as it applies to normal apartment buildings. We've obtained a legal opinion about these special laws. We submitted it to your planning staff and they have discussed it in their report to council. The special laws prevent, and this is the question you're asking, they prevent a purchaser from existing a tenant who is in occupancy at the date of conversion. So specifically, an example, we convert the building to a condominium tomorrow. Tomorrow, all the tenants who live there are protected under this special provision. If a purchaser comes in and say, I try to sell a unit and there's a tenant in it because I'm a sneaky guy and I want to sell it and make a profit. I say to the purchaser, oh, you can evict that tenant and then you can move in. Well, that's going to be a big problem because the law prevents that purchaser from evicting that tenant. They can buy the unit, they can own the unit, but they will become a landlord and have to adopt the existing lease, no different than any other purchase of any other property in Ontario where a tenant exists, except that when a property is converted to a condominium, you lose the right to evict a tenant to live in the unit. If you owned a house and you sold that house, then you could evict the tenant and live in that house, but not in a condominium that's been converted under a special law that was created in Ontario to stop.
I want to be clear on this.
Yes.
Because you're explaining it, because right now my understanding is that that would be your intention. I buy
No,
your
no,
condo.
no. This is the law.
buy your
It's not my
condo.
intention, sir.
I'm just gonna go through in a hypothetical example. I buy one of those units.
You buy one.
I can't move into it.
No, you can't move into it.
It's illegal for me
It's
as the
illegal.
owner
That's correct.
to say, I want to move into that unit
It's completely illegal. It is against this. The
for the
government
length of the lease.
the government understood your concern. They created this law specifically to stop developers from converting buildings into condominiums and then evicting people by the process of sale of units. That law was created specifically for your concern.
And are they bound then by the current rental increases that follow the Landlord Tenant Act, or is it the Wild West?
The Landlord Tenant Act governs as long as a tenant is in occupancy of a space. So all of the normal laws of Landlord Tenant Act govern, regardless of whether I'm the landlord and owner of that space, or a new purchaser is the owner of that space. All landlords in Ontario are still governed under the Landlord Tenant Act and all the rules there too. But the one special provision is that the new purchaser cannot evict to move into that space.
So they're still bound by the rent controls of the Landlord Tenant Act.
That's correct.
The new purchaser cannot occupy the building
That's correct.
unless. the
You
tenant-
cannot change the rent until someone decides of their own free will to move out. Once a space is vacant, a landlord, any landlord can change the rent. But if someone lives there and still living under what becomes a 30-day repeating lease, every lease starts out as a 1-year lease.
Right.
But the province of Ontario governs it to the effect that after the first year, it becomes a 30-day repeating lease. And so under all 30-day repeating leases, regardless of how many years they go for, you are
Counselor.
governed by the
I want to
rental
say
increase
thank you.
laws.
I appreciate your candidness.
Yeah. Counselor Carpenter, we have you next.
Thank you. And I'll just quickly follow up on that, Gabriel. Thanks for coming. If I purchase that tenant, that unit, I can't move into it under the legislation. Our staff will verify that, and I think they have in the report. But if I resell that rule is gone. Is that not correct? It's only the one time.
You're confusing me, Counselor. No, the tenant lease, it governs. If
Yes.
the unit, if the tenant is in possession of the space at the date of condominium conversion, then the tenant's lease governs and it exists and you cannot evict that person. And it doesn't matter whether you sell that unit 30 times or once or 15 times. The new purchaser cannot evict that tenant under existing legislation.
So that applies if I'm for even for me moving in the unit that I purchased,
You
Is what
cannot
you're-
move into the unit that you purchase.
because I cannot evict the tenant, no matter how many times I sell that unit.
That's correct.
Well, okay,
The law
staff.
does not have, the law does not have a cap on it. It is
Okay.
not a
All right, and then notice the tenants that you sent out. You're offering the tenants $1,800 cash upon request
I'm sorry, could you just,
for
I'm
renovations.
sorry, can you just repeat that, sir? sorry.
Notice that you sent out. I got a copy of it here. It says that the tenant can accept 2 months free rent for the renovations of the window replacement upon condominium approval, or the tenant can accept $1,800 cash upon condominium approval.
Correct. Yes, what's your question, sir?
So the question is, why is it upon condominium approval? 'Cause
Well, all of the
that mean- is this-
improvements,
You're not
all
gonna do
of
the
the-
improvements if there's not a condominium approval. Is that what that means?
all of the improvements that we offered to the planning staff that we would do are based on condominium approval because the capital improvements, the whole purpose of creating the condominium is to create a method for us to finance the capital improvements.
Yeah,
So all
I get
capital improvements are going to be based on condominium approvals.
Okay, now, as you know, once a condominium is established, after the 3rd year, well, even before the 3rd year, actually, a new condominium, they have to do a reserve fund study by an architect or an engineering firm designated to do so. And that reserve fund study then will set out a plan, a 30-year plan, sometimes 50-year plan, how the condominium will be maintained and what the condominium fees will be done. Are you willing to do that before?
Under law, I have to do that, sir.
No, but were you willing to do that before condominium conversion so that the
Oh,
prospective?
yeah. In fact, most of the improvements that we've offered to do would all come under that review. And we have no problem in doing an engineering review to begin with.
And like a condominium engineering review that would be acceptable for a new condominium.
Yeah, of course. Well,
And that
I
would be,
mean, this
because that's,
is a trick question, sir, because you're asking me, can I redevelop the building to meet today's standards of a new condominium? No. I
no,
cannot.
the Condominium
not.
Corporation Act that says what the maintenance program will be, how the building will be upgraded, when windows will be replaced, so forth, the roofs and all that sort of stuff that goes on with a condominium study. The reason I'm saying this, Gabriel, is because we've seen a couple buildings in town where that's happened, and they were promised they sold the units. Individuals bought the units. After they did the study, they found out that $200 a month condominium fee now went to $600 because the building needed so many improvements over the period. So that's that, and I just don't want any purchasers to get stung by that. And I know that's not your intention. So I just want to make that clear that we're going to have the condominium purchasers are going to be protected from having such things happen to them because they can pass on those new fees to the current tenants by going to the landlord and tenant review board and pass on those increased expenses.
Okay, so that's a lot of questions.
I'm
First
gonna
of all,
pause right there. We've exceeded the 10 minutes again, unless there's appetite to Mayor Davis, another 10 minutes. Is that what you're suggesting?
Another 10.
Another 10, seconded by Councillor Van Tilburg. Sorry, Councillor Carpenter, continue. Sorry, we got to vote first. Really exercising my governance. So thank you, guys.
The motion to waive the rules carries on a recorded vote of 6-0. Those voting in favor, Mayor Davis, Councillor Sepoli, Celeste, Martin, Carpenter, and Van Tilburg.
Okay, we're resetting the clock and I believe you were about to speak.
Okay, thank you. And thank you, Gabriel. So I get we're willing to do a condominium reserve fund study in advance of the conversion so that we know exactly what the costs are going to be in the long term and what the condominium fees will be with a new condominium based on the reserve fund study. Is that my understanding, Gabriel?
yes, sir.
Okay, I appreciate that. No tenant can be evicted, current tenant as a condominium conversion can be evicted by a new owner, and I'll have staff verify that. I understand it for the first owner, but I didn't know it was consecutive owners. I think I'd like to follow that up. And your intention is only sell half the units or 30 units, I think?
My intention is to sell 29 units, sir.
29 units. Is that so that you maintain the majority ownership of the condominium corporation?
Absolutely, that is correct, yes.
So that you can manage the condominium corporation, make sure it's managed fully, in your opinion, I guess.
Well, yeah, I wouldn't want to have an investment where I don't have control, sir.
I got you. Yeah. Okay. All right. And so the units that are going to be sold, are they going to depend on what units become empty first? Is that the idea?
Yes, it's random. Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Thank you. That's my questions for now. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. We have Councillor Martin next.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. In your presentation, you touched on the idea of rent to own. Is that something that you're going to be offering to existing tenants?
Sorry, I don't recall anyone touching on that, sir.
Sir. That was in context to the policies that were outlined by the city of Brantford and the Brantford housing plan. It was giving reference to the items that are available out there, not specific to this.
So you're not going to offer rent to own for any of these units?
To be honest, sir, you're asking me about marketing programs and whether or not the market is going to look for rent to own product. I don't know. Right now, I couldn't tell you whether these demand for these units is going to be robust. I couldn't tell you whether it's going to be difficult to sell a unit. I couldn't tell you how long it's going to take to sell a unit. I couldn't tell you whether we're going to give incentives to sell a unit. I couldn't tell you whether we're going to do vendor take back mortgages to sell a unit, because if we wanted to, we could give people mortgages. They wouldn't have to go to the bank. If we wanted to, we could do rent to own, but these are all marketing programs that are geared to whether or not the demand for the product is high or low. So I really can't predict that, sir.
Okay, and you stated your intention is to sell 29 units.
That's correct.
Once all the capital improvements are done that you want to do, is it your intention to then start selling off the other 31, or do you see hanging on to them longer?
To be honest with you, sir, we are long-term investing owners. We prefer to have performing investments and keep them for the long term. We own other property in the city of Brantford, and we have always tried to own performing assets. As long as assets are performing, we have no interest in selling them any different than a REIT has any interest in selling a performing asset. And when I say performing, I specifically mean that the rent reflects a current market rent that is profitable to us and therefore is a performing asset. So as people move out of the last 31 units, we will be renovating those. We will be improving those, but they will not be for sale. They will be re-rented at current market rents, which makes them sustainable for us.
Okay, thank you.
I'm going to ask one quick question before we go to second time speakers. I'm unfamiliar with this provision that protects tenants where a condo conversion is concerned. Is that strictly for tenants that are in a lease or in an active lease at the time of conversion? Is there any, does that provision speak to the lease that the tenant is in?
Madam Chairman, not being a lawyer, but receiving legal opinions, I can say that it applies to any person who is in occupancy of the space at the date of conversion. Now, that could be a 30-day tenancy. It could be a 1-year tenancy. And 30-day tenancies, by the way, are not a legal piece of paper that gets signed every 30 days. It's just that the province has declared that after a 1-year tenancy exists, tenants evolve into a 30-day tenancy. And that only means that if they want to leave, they need to give 60 days notice. That's really the only effect. But all the other terms and conditions of the 1-year or initial lease remain in effect. And that includes the protections that I'm talking to you about.
Okay, I'm gonna, when it comes time for staff, I'll ask that question of staff just for elaboration, but thank you so much. Moving forward, we have Mayor Davis. Second time speaker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to go back to this issue about evicting tenants. So a landlord can evict a tenant because they want to occupy the unit themselves, but you're telling us that doesn't apply in this case. What about a rent eviction? Landlords can evict tenants if they intend to renovate a unit. In fact, some landlords, less than scrupulous landlords, use that as a way to gain access to units. What about that? So rent eviction provisions, do they apply?
Am I on again?
Yeah.
Okay. So, sir, I actually had a 10-minute presentation that I was going to make that I never got to. And the very first part of my presentation deals specifically with renovations. Now, I can just answer you directly if you want. It doesn't matter to me.
Why don't you tell us what you understand, and we'll probably have staff confirm it, but what's your understanding?
Okay. My understanding is that right now, landlords have the legal right to evict under the style known as renovation eviction. That's a right that has existed in Ontario for as long as I can remember. Us have been the managers of these buildings for close to 60 years, my father before myself. I can unequivocally tell you that we've never used the method of renovation eviction to evict any tenant. I do understand that renovation evictions have become prevalent in the city of Hamilton and in the city of Toronto. I understand the concerns that have been raised by these evictions, and I understand why councils and provincial governments are talking about changing the laws revolving around renovation evictions. I understand that this council is going to be bringing changes revolving around renovation evictions, and that those guidelines will govern and that those guidelines will protect tenants from renovation evictions. But what I really am trying to convey here to you today, sir, is that we have no need to do renovation evictions because we experience annual migration and vacancies of tenants. And the best example I can give to you of that is that since we started this
Well,
application
perhaps I can help.
process,
I'm not concerned about your intent. I think you, in your material, indicated your reputation as a landlord. That's not something that you have a reputation for doing. I accept that. I'm more concerned about the person that buys a condo, becomes a landlord, and yes, they can't get it, they can't evict the tenant because they want to live there, but could they evict the tenant? This is a new condo owner, not yourself. Can they evict that tenant because now they want to renovate it?
well, they would be governed by any renovation bylaws that you're going to create, sir.
All right, so the
So
answer is
basically, the council that governs this.
so there's no special provision of Landlord and Tenant Act of the Condominium Act, similar to you can't.
There is no special provision in the legislation that to this day diminishes the rights of a landlord to do a renovation eviction. That is the only reason why councils are creating renovation
So-
bylaws.
So that special provision you talked about that wouldn't allow a new condo owner to evict somebody because they want to occupy the unit, and that's a special rule that only applies to these situations. There's nothing similar then in respect to rent eviction.
Not to my knowledge, sir.
Okay. Different question about rent control. So these units come under rent control. They're covered by the rent control. Is that correct?
Yes,
So when do they lose the protection of that act?
they don't.
So what happens if you sold it to a condo owner, it becomes vacant, it's vacant for a couple of months. They do some renovations.
If an existing tenant leaves after a new purchaser takes possession, if that tenant leaves, then only the laws of the current Landlord Tenant Act govern. There's no special provisions any longer
Right.
for that space.
So if a condo owner, a new condo owner, if their tenant moves out and it's vacant for a while, and then
If their tenant chooses to.
right,
move out,
so then
yes.
they lease it again to a new tenant
They
and they
could.
can charge whatever they want.
Of course they could, yes, sir.
Okay.
That's the landlord law in Ontario.
Good, I'm going to turn that. I'm also concerned, about the subject that Councillor Carpenter raised.
But sorry, sir, I have to interject. We intend to do that as well.
Yeah.
So on the units that are remaining, the 31 units that we own, regardless of whether we get a condominium approval or not, we're going to be renovating units and re-renting them at current market rents. We're not preserving below market rents. Neither I nor any future landlord will do that.
All right, just want to make sure that's clear. So my next question, so I live in a condo, and I was a treasurer of our condo corp for 10 years, so I understand the act. And I am familiar with other situations in town with buildings that have been converted. And in fact, there's one building in particular I'm thinking of where there was a special assessment of $50,000 per unit in order to deal with repairs that probably really weren't highlighted when the building was converted. And the only way you can really deal with that is to do this reserve fund study by a properly qualified engineer with a 50-year time horizon. So I want to know, on this condo conversion, are you telling us that there will be a standard reserve fund study done by a qualified engineer?
100%, sir, yes.
Okay.
Prior, in fact, it should be a condition of approval.
And in no way am I casting aspersions on you by asking this, but I know that when you retain an engineer to do a reserve fund study, you can give them certain parameters that kind of limits the scope of what they do. You can do that. I know it's, let's just say that there are techniques you can do to reduce the scope of the reserve fund study. So my question to you is this: would you be content to have the reserve fund study overseen by our staff, with the engineer reporting to our staff, and that your firm would pay the cost?
Yes, that's fine, sir. No, it doesn't matter to me. We have no interest in trying to diminish the renovation of the building. We've already proposed asset improvements to the building to your staff that are substantially more than any engineering review is even going to look at. We've proposed putting solar panels on the roof for energy efficiency. That won't even come under an engineering review. So we're already prepared to do asset improvements that exceed the scope of any engineering review that you may be interested in doing. So yes, sir, we're prepared to do that.
Okay, we've well exceeded our time here. We're going to move forward. So thank you so much for answering that question over and over again. I'll have you take a seat, and then I'm going to invite staff up to give their presentation. And as a reminder, you have 10 minutes, inclusive of questions of this committee.
I never got the opportunity to do my presentation.
I'm going to have to suggest that you had your opportunity at the beginning of this. It was chosen that your agent would represent the presentation, and that's what we heard from.
But I was listed as a delegation.
Well, then you'll have an opportunity to speak during the time for delegations. Oh, he was. One moment.
Sorry, through the chair, as this is a statutory public meeting, the registration as a delegation was as the applicant group. So you wouldn't appear as a delegation in this case.
So procedurally, because you're an applicant, you had to give your presentation during the applicant time that was allotted on the agenda. So,
Okay.
okay, thank you so much. And staff, you're on.
Good morning, everyone. I just want to make sure that I can be heard. Everyone can hear me properly.
We can hear you.
Perfect. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Mila Masick. I am an intermediate planner here at the City of Brantford. I apologize in advance. I'm feeling a little bit under the weather, so I apologize for any pauses that I might need to take. I am here today to discuss an application for a draft plan of condominium for lands known municipally as 1 and 2 Melrose Street, otherwise known as file number 29CD-24501. The purpose of this application is to convert the ownership type to condominium ownership, also known as an application for a draft plan of condo under the Planning Act. Next slide, please. On the site, there are 2 existing 4-story apartment buildings with 2 connections, and a total of 60 units shared between the 2 of them. Landscaping is located at the perimeter of the site and between the buildings as provided as courtyards. Surrounding the property are residential uses to the north, east, and south, including single detached dwellings, converted residential buildings, as well as an apartment building to the southwest. And Commercial Plaza is also located west of the site with service and retail commercial uses. Next slide, please. Thank you. For additional information regarding this application, just to recap, again, the applicant is proposing to change 60 units from rental to ownership tenure. There are currently 82 parking spaces on the site, and the applicant is proposing 1 space to be unitized per dwelling unit, and the remaining 22 parking spaces are proposed to become common element visitor parking spaces. At this time, there are no construction or changes proposed under this application. However, capital improvements are proposed as mentioned previously, if and when the units are sold off. Next slide, please. And here I've included the existing conditions plan. The buildings are located in the center of the site. Just again, another note that there are 60 total dwelling units under or between both buildings. And the split of the bedrooms is 14 1-bedroom units and 46 2-bedroom units. Again, 82 parking spaces, and main access is provided from Melrose Street, with fire access provided from North Park Street. Next slide. I've provided a few site photos here. This photo shows the front of the buildings and taken from the Melrose Street entrance. Next slide. This photo is taken from the back of to the rear of the buildings, taken closest to the North Park Street entrance. And next slide. And this photo just shows the fire access from North Park Street. Next slide. Thank you. Under our official plan, this property is located within the neighborhood's residential designation. The intent of this designation is to provide residential uses to citizens in a variety of forms and densities, and this can also include supplementary uses as well. Under both of our applicable zoning bylaws, this property is zoned as medium density or mid-rise residential, as can be seen on the slide. The buildings were built well before either of these bylaws were in place. And as such, the subject site does not require any official plan or zoning bylaw amendments. Next slide. Thank you. So today, staff have prepared an information report for this application. The intent of providing this report is to provide preliminary information to members of the public and to the committee. While staff will consider the applicable policies and objectives in place, staff also wish to utilize the comments received from the public and direction from Planning Committee to maintain existing tenant security and protections as best as possible. Understanding that the majority of these protections are provided within the Residential Tenancies Act, which is a piece of legislation that is outside of the scope of the Planning Act. Comments received from the public and from Planning Committee are critical for staff to assess and be able to come back with a recommendation report at the next committee. The comments will be incorporated into that said recommendation report. Including, and this report will also include conditions of draft approval to ensure that applicable issues are addressed prior to the final recommendations being presented for consideration. Next slide. In conclusion, staff recommend that this information report be received today, that any comments received at this meeting be considered at a future or within a future recommendation report and subsequent planning committee meeting. I'd be happy to hear any questions at this time. Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. We do have a few questions. Councillor Sless, I have you up first.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to get clarity because I think I heard from the presenters of the proponent. One presenter said that on change of ownership, a tenant could be displaced. The other presenter indicated that there's a special provincial law that does not allow that to happen. So I've heard two conflicting, I guess, scenarios based on the same thing. Could you please clarify?
For sure. I may want to defer to our legal staff here for this question, but I can provide a brief synopsis of the rights of existing tenants. This is all to my understanding. So a landlord may not give notice under section 48 or 49 to a person who is a tenant of a existing tenant of a rental unit when it became subject to the registered declaration and description. Section 48 relates to whether the purchaser or owner wants to live in the unit. Section 49 relates to whether, this is also relating to whether the purchaser would like to live within the unit. Additionally, a landlord cannot issue a notice of eviction under these previous sections before the conversion takes place and while the application is in progress, if the tenant was a tenant at the time of conversion. Additionally, there may be exemptions to the above two sections, and these exemptions include if no units were rented out prior to July 10th, 1986, which does not apply to this subject site since it was a rental building from the 1960s. There are other limitations and restrictions. I'm not sure if you'd like me to keep going, but simply put, if a purchaser offers to purchase a unit that's being rented, and if the tenant was the tenant at the time of conversion, the tenant must be given the first right to purchase the unit instead of the person who made the offer. This will take approximately, the landlord has to give the tenant at least 3 days to decide whether to purchase the unit. And afterwards, the landlord can accept the offer of the purchaser. This is my current understanding.
So at the end of that, can a person be displaced?
Sorry, we have
Under
staff in the back that we're going to defer this to. Thank you.
Sure.
Through the chair, Mila's explanation here is correct. If the tenant is in the unit and has a current lease at the time of conversion, then the landlord is not able to use the provisions 48 or 49, which is how people are evicted from their units for personal use or vacant purchase. So it doesn't actually matter whether the landlord is the initial purchaser or a later purchaser. The section 48 and 49 are not available to landlords to use in this case.
So am I to assume from this then that a person cannot be evicted on change of ownership?
Yes.
Are you done, Councillor Sless? Yes. So we've exceeded our 10-minute time limit for staff to ask questions. I'm going to suggest that we move forward because we will have opportunity sitting up here to ask staff questions later on during the discussion period. So we will move forward. And before we go into the public portion of this statutory public hearing, I'm going to suggest just a 5-minute refreshment break, and then we'll begin with the public hearing. Okay. So we'll return in 5 minutes. Okay, we're going to begin shortly. Okay, we're calling this meeting back in session. And we're going to begin now with the public portion. So this will be a public meeting to hear from the public on their thoughts on this condo conversion. As it was addressed earlier, this is not, there'll be no decision attached to this today. This is simply a means for staff to communicate with the public and find out what your thoughts are on this so that we can make an educated recommendation in the future. So I thank everyone for coming out. If there are any members of the public who are attending today, either virtually or in person, and you would like to address the planning committee, just raise your hand, either virtually or here in person, physically raise your hand. When you do come up, you're going to need to state your name and your mailing address as a reminder. You'll have 10 minutes to give a presentation to the committee, and that will be inclusive of questions from the committee. So are there any members of the public who would like to speak to this item? Yep, you can approach the bench. Sounds judicial. Approach the bench. When you get to the microphone, just push the button, and when it lights up red, just state your name. And you mentioned you had a question. This won't be a back and forth.
Yes, I have a question.
Okay, go ahead.
What I understood today that I didn't realize from our last meeting at the rope factory was that someone could buy our current apartment while we're in it.
Sorry, ma'am, what was your name?
Oh, sorry, Susan Place.
Thank you.
I'm at 2 Melrose, apartment 203.
Thank you.
And so I thought that it was as we move out, then our apartments would become available as a condo, renovated and become a condo. But from what I understood today is that our apartments could be sold while we're still living in them. And I wasn't aware of that. So I just wanted confirmation on that. And also, what would happen if a developer come in and just bought all the apartments that were available, all 27 units, I believe, you said. And then do we still have control as a tenant in the building? So that's my first question. My second question is, you're saying that we're protected by our lease, but I currently don't have a lease at all. And I know a lot of other people that don't. If that's the protection, are we going to be offered leases, or do we need that for protection?
So just so you know, at the end of the public portion, the applicant will have an opportunity to respond. So
Okay.
I'm hoping that they'll jot down those questions, and if they don't, we're making note as well.
Okay, that was it.
Thank you. And there is a question from Councillor Carpenter.
Oh.
He's tuning in virtually. Councillor Carpenter.
Thank you. Thanks for coming. And to the chair, please don't ask the residents to give their apartment number. I'm very concerned about residents coming on a public television where their public presentation and giving out their actual personal address, especially in this day of violence. So just would rather that they didn't give out the apartment number. But thanks for coming. How long have you lived there?
Well, I originally lived in Melrose 1, and then I moved over to Melrose 2. So I've been there 7 years.
Okay, so are you aware that the understanding is that once your 1-year lease expires, you do have a lease under the Landlord Tenants Act that's month to month? So you are currently in a lease that's month
Okay,
to
I
month.
haven't signed anything. I have
No,
not.
you don't have to sign anything. It's the provincial regulation, as I understand it.
Okay, all right.
What is your position? How has the building been for you? Like, how's the current landlord been? How's the maintenance of the building been? Those sorts of things.
Well, I love living there. I'm very happy there. I like my apartment. I want to continue to stay there. They've had a lot of challenges with superintendents and illnesses of people that have been maintaining the building and, but that's been changed and things are improving. And, if that's your question.
Yep. And so that, and yeah, because it's an old building. But you've been there a long time, so you know a lot of tenants there. Like, is it
Yeah.
is it kind of like a family atmosphere amongst the tenants? Do they help each other out? Do they know each other? Do
Oh,
they?
definitely, definitely. There's a lot of seniors and a lot of people with physical challenges that live there.
Yep.
And, yeah, they, you know, it is a real close community there.
So your only concern is being able to maintain your tenancy and that of your neighbors.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay. All right. Thanks for coming. Thank you,
Okay,
Madam Chair.
you're right.
Thank you, Susan. And as a reminder, we do need everyone to state their name and address, but if you're uncomfortable saying that in front of the delegation, you can just simply write your address. There's a piece of paper over there, okay? Sir? And if you can state your name and address, you'll have 10 minutes inclusive of questions. Thank you. Oh, there's a little button there. When it lights up red, there you go.
I have no questions. I just want to make a very quick statement. I don't need 10 minutes either. My name is Joseph Byrne. I live at 2 Melrose. I've been there for 16 years next month. It's the longest I've lived anywhere in my life, and I'm 82. So I'm comfortable there. I like it. I enjoy the people that live there. I fully support the condominium effort here. If a unit is not performing, like if a complex is not performing, you get rid of it. This is a great little place to live. I can only speak for myself, but I've talked to an awful lot of people in the building over the last year since we had our meeting January last year. And the majority of them are perfectly fine with what Gabe intends to do with the complex. And I just want to offer my support. And that's all I had to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, but don't go anywhere because we do have 2 questions. Up first, I have Mayor Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Barnes, for coming out and speaking to us today. A question for you. So you're telling us you're okay with the condo conversion?
I am, sir.
All right. And you plan to continue to stay there then as a tenant?
I'm going to live there till I die. That's my game plan.
Yeah. So can I ask you, so why are you okay with the condo conversion?
Well, it's business. You know, we all know about business. If you're not making money, unload it. If you can make changes by whereas you can create an effective business, like a profit margin in it, you hang on to it. You do whatever you have to do. And this is what he's doing.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Carpenter, you had your hand up. Did you still want?
My question would have been if the tenant wants to stay, but Mayor Davis asked that question.
Up next, Councillor Van Tilburg.
Am I done?
Nope. One little
Nope.
question.
Okay.
So should your unit be sold?
I beg your pardon?
Should your unit be sold and condomized and then the new owner at the expiry of your lease choose to have you evicted, you're okay with that?
My apartment is not going to be sold except through attrition. When I die, he can do whatever he wants. Or when I move, he can do whatever he wants.
Do you have that in writing?
No,
Okay, thank you.
I do not.
It looks like we're done with you, Joseph. And I could only hope I look so good at 82. Thank you for the inspiration
Well,
this morning.
thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in? So not to sound repetitive, but name and address, and you have 10 minutes inclusive of questions.
Thank you. Suzanne Watson, 53 James Street, Barrie, Ontario. I'm actually here on behalf of my parents who are 82, oh God, 85 almost and 80. They have lived in that apartment building since 2009. I can speak on their behalf saying that I have noticed renovations have been questionable at best over the time that they've lived there. And I do have concerns that are genuine, that they have been given some information, and not all the information, and have been asked to sign things or, you know, in support of the condo conversion that they necessarily didn't fully understand, was given to them by a gentleman named Robert. Unfortunately, I'm not sure exactly what his role is in the organization. I'd love some clarification. My concern is that if their unit is turned into a condo, and then they have a I'm sorry, I apologize, I don't know your last name, sir. The one that is owned by Gabe, and a new tenant, or sorry, a new owner comes in, and then condo fees are increased. Can that condo owner now pass those increased condo fees on to my parents? Can they also, who is responsible if there's renovations or there's repairs that are needed in my parents' condo? They have to go up now, a faceless entity. Who is going to help them get their condo renovated or their apartment that they've lived in? And I totally understand and I appreciate that this is business, and that when people move out, absolutely, you know, change things to a rental if they have to at fair market value. I completely understand that. My concern is that my parents are in their late 80s, as was the gentleman who spoke here earlier. Who's going to advocate on their behalf if they have a condo that is owned by somebody else, or you know, somebody who's not necessarily interested or just wants to pass on fees to them? I want to know who's going to pay those fees.
Thank you. Your name was Susan?
Suzanne.
Suzanne, thank you. We do have a question for you from Councillor Carpenter.
Yeah, Susan, thank you for coming on behalf of your parents, and thank you for taking care of your parents. It's very good these days. You mentioned that someone was going around with a paperwork to get people to sign, and I've seen this myself, to sign a document saying they are in favor of the condo conversion. And you're saying the parents didn't quite understand what they were signing. Is that be fair?
Yeah, it's my understanding that they weren't. When I actually pulled up the agenda for today's meeting before I came down here, I was quite frankly shocked to see my parents' apartment number on there. Obviously they'd signed it, but in all the discussions that I've had with them, this has been going on for however many months or a year now, they've never been fully in support of this because it was never properly explained to them. They're both seniors, and while both very smart and astute people, there's a lot of legalese that's involved in these kinds of things, and I'm not sure. I'm not saying that it was done maliciously, but I'm not sure that information was passed along correctly, clearly, and precisely.
Do you know why there was a petition going around asking people to sign in favor of a condominium conversion? Do you know why that would be necessary?
Well, of course, it gets the tenants on side. It makes everybody look like they're in support of this. But when I mentioned it to my mom last night, she was a bit confounded that that was what they had actually supported. So, I mean, I understand. Of course, any developer will want to have the current tenants in place support their program, and they're,
Well,
you know,
they've lived there 15 years, and could they afford to live someplace else at the current rents?
they'd absolutely be moving in with me. There's no way. And there's no way that who's going to give them a mortgage in their late 80s? I wouldn't. And I'm their daughter.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks for coming. Appreciate it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much, Suzanne. Is there anyone else in council? No. Pink scarf. There we go. State your name and address, and then we'll take it from there. You have to push a button on the microphone when it lights up red. It's already
Here?
perfect.
My name is Joan Rushton and I live at 1 Melrose. I am very concerned because of the fact that a lot of tenants are in their 70s, 80s. I believe we still have a couple 90. I have a paper here where Gabe, and first of all, I'd like to say I have no animosity towards Gabe. I had a bat fly into my apartment and he come himself to help us find the bat. We were unsuccessful, but however, so I'll continue with this. This says the application for condominium is exactly what was promised at the public meeting. That was January 20th, I believe. And the promise to let tenants remain in place as long as they wish is still the commitment that remains today. Nothing has changed. What I am concerned about, so that means we can live there forever and ever. Amen. But I'm concerned about the second paragraph on that letter, January 20th, the first right of refusal. And the first right of refusal, I understand, is we'll get a letter or a knock on the door saying your apartment's up for sale. Do you want to buy it? None of us can get a mortgage. Some of us have a little savings. And if we have to get out and rent somewhere else, it'll be gone. We'll be the street people of Brantford. What I'm saying is, why, if we're supposed to be able to stay there forever and ever, why is this first right of refusal? I just need clarification on it. A lot of us are worried. We've worried since January 20th, and maybe it's because we're older people. We're very concerned. We're very comfortable in our apartments, and we're going to have to get out and pay double the rent if we have to move. So, like I say, I'm here for more than just myself. Thank you.
Thank you, Joan. And we do have a question from Councillor Carpenter.
Thanks, Joan, for coming. How long have you lived there?
I think 8 years.
8 years. And you said, I think you said you couldn't afford to live somewhere else at the current market rents?
I beg your pardon?
I think you said you couldn't afford to live somewhere else in the.
No, I mean, the rents are just about double from what I pay, and some of us have worked all our lives and have a little savings, but that's going to be gone. And then where are we all going?
And how do you, I want to ask you the same question I asked somebody, other tenant. How do you feel about the maintenance of the building? I heard that it was fair.
Well,
And how about the relationship with the other tenants and how everybody works together?
What was that again? Sorry.
And about how the other tenants work together with each other.
Well, we're like family there. We're like family. We exchange Christmas gifts on our floor. Everybody speaks to everybody. There's no wild parties there because we're all too old. So, like I say, we get along very good there.
And one follow-up question too, Joan. I'm not sure, I didn't get to ask the question of how much they're going to be sold for, but how would you feel if the city used it as part of their housing portfolio and we actually purchased the units and kept you in units? As the law allows and allows us to have more affordable housing units. Would you be okay if the city took some of those ownerships?
I'm sorry, I can't hear
Sorry,
you.
would you be all right with the city taking some ownership of those units as part of our affordable housing strategy?
I would be. The letter that I wanted to quote, the letter that was sent around, if we support or don't support, a lot of people were intimidated because we were told by the prior superintendent, well, if you don't sign for it, well, then the owners are going to sell. And there was a little bit of intimidation there. And I didn't sign for it. And I was told they needed a wood chipper in my apartment, I guess because I'm a blockhead. So.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. And thanks for coming.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Joan. Is there anyone else in council chambers or attending virtually who would like to speak to this matter? I have to ask 3 times. So is there anyone else here in council chambers who would like to speak to this matter? Anyone else want to speak to this matter, either virtually or in council chambers? Okay. So seeing none, this concludes the public hearing on this agenda item. So we will have an opportunity to have some clarification brought forward to us from the applicants should they choose. There's 5 minutes allotted to that. So would the applicant or his agent like to come forward and provide clarification on anything that you've heard today from the public?
I've tried to make a note of the questions as best I could, and I'll try not to miss any. First, in regard to the fear of rent evictions, I think it's important to note that we're prepared to enter into an agreement to abide by the City of Hamilton's rent eviction bylaws until such time as the municipality devises their own. Secondly, I wish to comment that in regards to vacancy by attrition, which is what we're trying to do, we're only following guidance of previous council's decision in regard to asset management. The council has previously agreed that vacancy by attrition is appropriate, and that's why we're following that method. Third, the current vacancy status, do we need to evict people? Well, we don't. There are currently 9 units vacant. We don't need to evict anybody in order to do the capital improvements. What happens if the property is sold? Well, it is the case that we're trying to sell 29 condominium units, but even if we didn't, every landlord in Ontario has the right to sell his property at any time. This building could be sold at any time. Any of our properties could be sold at any time. No different than any other landlord in Ontario. I believe the question regarding leases was answered. They after the 12-month period, they become perpetual by law. It says written documents are not required. I'm really not clear on the question regarding right of first refusal. I don't really understand how we have any rights of eviction under the laws that exist. I don't believe that we're allowed to say to a tenant, we have a buyer, now you have a choice of being vacated or purchasing the unit on the same basis as the other buyer. That's what a first right of refusal is. I'm not familiar with this law. I don't believe we have that right. If we do, that's news to me, and I'd defer to your legal staff to clarify that position, because I'm not aware of it. With regards to the what's being known as the support petition, actually, that was created after the public meeting, where all of our information was given to all of the people who attended. And it was not, in fact, a support petition. It was a question of whether you support or are against the public hearing, because staff asked us to get input from the existing tenants. And in fact, some people did sign against on that, what we're calling a petition, but really it's just an inquiry. Whether or not people felt intimidated, I'm sorry for that. It was not our intention, but I don't really know how to address that. It's also my understanding that condominium fees cannot be added to increase a tenant's rent. A tenant's rent is bound by the Landlord-Tenant Act, which is governed annually at between 1% and 2%. Those are the increases that are permitted. And if you try to increase for other specific causes, which the province sets out only specific causes that are permitted, you can try to go to the province for an annual increase of 3% one time for capital improvements or property tax increases. But other than those governing legislations, there is no opportunity to increase rents for condominium fees. So I'd have to say the answer to that is no, it's not legal to do that. Sorry, I don't know if I've missed something.
It's okay, because we've exceeded the 5 minutes. So you did the best you could. Perhaps you'll make note of those, and so I'm going to ask you to take a seat as we move forward into our debate and our discussion. Okay, so the public meeting part of this has concluded, and now I will need a mover and a seconder to place item 4.1 on the floor for discussion purposes. Moved by Councillor Martin, seconded by Mayor Davis. And that, of course, is to accept the report. So looking for Mayor Davis, would you like to speak?
Well, that's why I was waving my arm at you. So this is something we haven't really dealt with before. It was also confusing, not only for me, but I'm sure we're hearing from all the tenants. Just what are the laws that apply to all this? There's different possibilities, things that could happen. And I don't doubt the answers that Gabe is giving us, but I think we do need some independent clarity regarding what exactly are the rules, what are the risks to the current tenants if they have a new owner through because their units become condoized and someone's bought. So, and I think that's the purpose of today is for us as members of the planning committee to tell staff what it is we want you to address when this comes back to us. So I'm going to give you a list from my perspective. One, I'm concerned about the impact this might have on the vacancy rate across the city. I mean, that's often very much a concern about condo conversions is the impact that it might have on the vacancy rate for rental accommodation cities. So I'd like to know from staff, not now, but when you come back, what's the current vacancy rate, what the impact this will have on the vacancy rate going forward. On the issue of the reserve fund study, I've seen too many cases in town where owners of condo apartments have gotten snookered and they're paying huge special assessments because from the time of transferring the building from ownership to condominium, there wasn't a proper engineering study done of what repairs might be required to the building over 20, 30, 40 years. So I want clarity that there will be a reserve fund study and that staff, if you don't oversee it, at least you'll have a peer review of what it is that the owner provides. I'd also like to know, I understand the law, which is if the tenants have a new landlord because it's somebody who bought a condo that Gabe sells, and I understand they can't be evicted just because the condo owner wants to move in. Need one, can you confirm that, please? And two, I'm more concerned though about a new condo owner deciding they want to renovate the unit and we have a rental eviction. So I want to know what it is that we can do as a council to restrict the ability of a new owner of a unit from doing a rent eviction. And also that Gabe is the current owner, although he says he's not going to be doing that. And I believe him. So the other issue is a lot of this has to do, our uncertainty has to do with the Rent Control Act, and we don't normally deal with it. And, you know, deals one with the, Gabe says the reason why he's doing this is because the Rent Control Act doesn't allow him to increase the rents to finance some very much needed repairs. And he wants to sell some units and use that money to finance some much needed repairs. I think that's the explanation I read in the report. So I'd like to know, what is it the Rent Control Act allows landlords to do? Can they increase rents because one, they've got an increase in condo fees they're paying? Two, when can they increase the rent for repairs, capital repairs? So we have a better understanding of that. So those are the questions that I would certainly be seeking clarification from staff. I know there's one other one, but I can't think about it. I'm sure another member of council will raise it. But with that information, I think it'll help us make a better decision. And also will provide, I think, some clarity to the present tenants in the building. I understand their concerns, which is they're paying, you know, pretty good rents. It's a building they enjoy, they've been in many years, and they don't want to be feeling the uncertainty of how long can I stay here? Is a new owner going to try and kick me out? So that they can charge higher rents. I fully understand that, and I think we need to get some clear answers and dependable answers for both the current people in the building and ourselves.
Thank you, Mayor Davis. Up next, Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Well, it's been a few years since I've been involved with the landlord tenant because I'm no longer a landlord. And even more years since I did a deep dive into some of the aspects of it. But my understanding of the renovation eviction process was that the tenant had first right of refusal to move back into the unit at the rent they were paying when they were evicted. I don't know if that's changed or not, but that was my understanding at one point. And I'm not an expert, so I don't know if that was even the case to start with. But it's possible for somebody to be evicted now for renovations to the unit. Sounds like because of the age of the building, some of the units need some serious renovations. So if there's no protection going forward from that, and the applicant has indicated they will abide by the Hamilton rules and willing to have that written into the conversion so that you have that protection. So the renovation isn't really an issue. I think it's already been explained that even if you haven't signed anything, just the fact that you're living there, you're on a month to month tenancy, which in effect is your lease, whether you've signed something or not. The one gentleman who spoke in favor of it made a very good point. He said, if the building's not performing, the owner has the right to sell it. And if he doesn't get this condo conversion, that's something that he may consider. I don't know. I haven't talked to him about it. But if he does, the new owner could make application for a higher than guideline increase. And that's something I've been through, but that was in the 80s. So I'm sure the rules have changed a lot on that. But that's something that would see your rents increase by as much as 8 to 10% possibly. So by converting it to a condominium, it gives them the finances to do capital projects without being forced into a situation to sell it and or apply for a higher than guideline increase. So I think this is a win-win all the way around. The tenants are protected by the new laws that are in place. You'll be protected from rent eviction because the applicant is willing to have written right into the agreement that he will abide by the Hamilton rules until such time as we make up our own. And the first right of refusal, that's not a choice of either you buy it or move out. That's a choice of you buy it or you continue as tenant with all the protections that were in place when it was converted to a condo. So that's not something to worry about either. I think most of the concerns raised by the tenants have been addressed. They might not fully understand them, but I believe that all their concerns have been addressed. I see no reason why this shouldn't go forward. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you so much. Councillor Carpenter.
Thank you. And we're not voting on whether this goes forward or not today, as I understand it. So first of all, I'd like to preface my comments by first thanking the mayor for his comments and for Mayor Davis, having living in a condo, understand the concerns and having dealt with the condo in Ward 4, where a conversion was done without any of these guideline protections, and what's happened to those owners has been discussed. Secondly, I'd like to also make sure that staff bring forward a renovation bylaw similar or exactly as the Hamilton one as soon as possible so we can protect other units. I want to preface my comments by saying to thanking Mr. Gasparini, actually, because Gabe has owned a number of rental units in the city of Brantford, and rental unit owners are few and far between, and he has been one, and I know for a fact that he's been very compassionate about the quality of his buildings and how they're maintained. Now, maybe there's some maintenance issues from time to time by who the superintendent is. I'm sure that can happen, but I just want to make sure that we recognize there's an individual coming forward that's putting a lot of provisions that doesn't have to be put in there to protect tenants. Secondly, he's following our example of what we did on Park Road South by only selling units as they become vacant. And I'm glad that he recognized our good work there. So I'd like staff to make sure that all the things that the mayor's asked for and that I've asked for are actually provided in the legal documents. And I'd like to make sure I ask staff, when this presentation comes back to us, do all the tenants of the building get notification once again?
Through you, Chair, when this does come back, it would not be considered a statutory meeting like this one. But if it's at your request, we could send out notice for.
Well, I will make an amendment at the end to add that as item D to make sure that's part of the recommendation going forward when I'm speaking to that. So thank you. For secondly, speaking forward to that, the city has affordable housing program, and my understanding it costs us well over what will be the sale price of these units for us to actually build new units or for the developers to build new units. So I think we should very much take a close look at purchasing some of these units from Mr. Gasparini so that we can keep affordable units in the long term as part of our inventory. Having a condo corporation eventually where we own units means the units outside will be maintained in perpetuity. The condo regulations for condos would mean that they have to be maintained as part of the reserve fund study process and condo fee process would probably be cheaper than us actually maintaining them ourselves through our own capital program. So there might be an opportunity here for us to look at purchasing some of these units to make sure they stay affordable in the long term. And I understand the owner needs there's a financial arrangement to be able to market the condos individually. Even if they don't sell them, you can still mark them individually. The unit itself will have a higher rate. Secondly, I would like the staff to look at the tax revenue of this apartment building and the potential tax revenue as each unit is converted to a condo unit, because even though they're not only going to sell 29 of them, they'd all be condos and they'd all pay taxes as an individual residential rate. So I'd like to know the difference between the tax revenue that would flow as well, because we may be able, if there's increased tax revenue, we can flow that to our housing process for more housing at the same time. So I'd like to have those. And Madam Chair, after all the people have spoken, I'd like to add amendment as item D. That will be that all the residents be notified when this comes back to planning committee and well in advance.
I'll make a note to cycle back to you to bring that forward officially. Councillor Sless.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I have concerns here. We have a large collection of older folks that are kind of living in a suspended life, that they're not really sure what's going on. They're not really sure what their rights are. They're not really sure what their future holds. And that's not a good way to be spending your not your twilight years, but you're getting on in years. So I think it's important that staff during this process educate them as much as we can to try and help them understand their rights and understand what their future looks like. Because I think right now, for many, it's very blurry and it's a very awkward position to be put in at that stage in your life. We keep referring to the Hamilton rules. I would question if anybody that lives in that apartment building knows what the Hamilton rules are or even how it applies to them. So I think, again, there's a lot of education needs to be done to help folks understand exactly what their rights are and how they can move forward and still live in a building where they can afford to live and where they want to live. There's so many things that I'm still confused about. I've heard that you can be evicted. I've heard you can't be evicted. I'm not really sure. I asked for clarity. I really didn't get it. But I would like to think that during this process of staff reviewing, that we get clarity on that as to exactly where does somebody legally stand when somebody's come in and purchased a condo that they're currently living in. So all of those things I would hope staff would consider. And I think a big part of this, as I said earlier, would be education and trying to help these folks understand exactly where they are, what their rights are, and exactly how they can be applied to this building. So I would hope staff will come back with something and we'll have a recommendation coming back from staff that reflects all of those things. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And seeing no further speakers, I do have a few questions that I've been holding back on. My question for staff is, with this rule that we've heard referenced with the condo conversion and the inability to evict, is that registered on title of the unit? So that when we're, 3 sales down the road, since it's been indicated that this lasts forever and ever, amen, how do we keep track of that?
To you, Madam Chair, it's not registered on title, but since it is only applicable to the current tenants should be aware that for the duration of the time that they live there, it applies regardless of who owns the unit. So it really wouldn't, it's more for the purchasers to educate themselves when they are purchasing.
Exactly.
Rather than a warning that needs to go with the tenants, because the tenants should be aware of their ongoing rights.
So in the interest or in the spirit of making sure that the tenants, the current tenants don't have any additional stress, whether it be 2 sales down the road or 3 sales down the road, is it possible that we register something on title that states something to this effect so that any purchasers down the road can at the very least look into it to see if they will be bound by this? How does that work?
I'm not aware of that as an option that's been used in the past. Realistically, purchasers purchasing a condo should educate themselves of their rights and obligations at the time of that purchase. If council is interested in information on this, I can certainly do some research and provide that with the other clarification that council has requested.
I think we should look into that when we're bringing a recommendation forward. If there's one thing we know is that, when you build a house near a factory and those individuals who own that house are bound by certain rules, using certain R values and things like that. If it's not registered on title, that gets lost in translation down the road. So my question really is, how do you convey that message down the road so that, yes, the tenants will be in the right and they won't be able to be evicted, but it doesn't stop them from having to go through a really long drawn out process with the landlord tribunal fighting the fact that they can't be evicted, whether that be 2 years from now or 10 years from now. So that's something that I would like to see looked into. I'll leave it there for now. Thank you so much. Councillor Carpenter, I understand you had an amendment. There's no other speakers if you'd like to bring that forward now.
Thank you. I'd like to add an item D to the recommendation, and the item D would say that staff make the residents aware with a factual information package to all residents and provide them with notice when this comes back to the planning committee, and that we give them an opportunity to speak to the planning committee at that time if they wish. And this should include the proponent as well.
I'll second that, Madam Chair.
And the reason thank you, Councillor Schluss. Speaking to it, I would just say that, this is the first time we've gone through this process in this way, and I'm glad we're at least going through this process as opposed to it happening without council being involved. We won't have the problems like we had on Colborne Street unit. And I am very thankful to the proponent, Gabriel, for bringing it forward in the way and it's such an honest and forthright process. I really appreciate that. And I appreciate him being a landlord as long as he has for our community and helping us with rental units. Secondly, as I said earlier, it's important that we have that everybody has the proper information. And so when the staff have their recommendations done and the report done, and then the factual information done, they could forward this then to all the owners as well as the proponent. And they know what their rights are, and they could keep that, in perpetuity. They'll know that they can stay on the unit for as long as they want, and that only units become vacant will then be sold. and how the process works. So just advising them of their rights, I think will give them some comfort and certainly will give us comfort that we're not going to see rent evictions. And I've already made my point about having a rent eviction bylaw as soon as possible from staff come forward. I'd be happy to be the mover. And I'm sure the mayor would be happy to be the seconder. I can't really speak for him, but I did there, I guess. But I think this is a process we're going through at a very difficult time, and we need to make sure we have these things in place with what's coming at us in the future. So that's why I would hope that we get unanimous support for this amendment. Thank you.
Not seeing anyone else looking to speak, I am going to be supporting this today. I think, the applicant and maybe our staff, sometimes we take advantage of the fact, myself, I know included in that we just know this information. We're so familiar with the Residential Tenancies Act that we take for granted the fact that, the average person doesn't know it the way or to the level that you do. So I love the idea of making sure that we're sharing some factual information with the tenants that they can be informed and seek some comfort in that information coming from us. So I am going to be supporting this, and I thank you for bringing this forward. We'll now call the vote on the amendment.
The recorded vote on the amendment carries on a vote of 6-0. Those voting in favor, Mayor Davis, Councillor Sicoli, Celeste, Martin, Carpenter, and Van Tilburg.
Okay, any discussion on the resolution as amended? Seeing none, we'll call the vote. Oh, Councillor Carpenter.
Sorry, Madam Chair, I was a little slow on getting to the button. To staff, how quickly do staff see this coming back to us? And a second follow-up question, how soon can we get a rent eviction bylaw in front of council?
Through you, Chair, 1 month.
Okay. Thank you. And then just speaking to it, as I said earlier, this is a very difficult process. 1 and 2 Melrose Crescent have been there for a long time, 60 years, I believe, owned by the same owner, by Gabe's father, who I did know as well. And Gabe himself have owned this building for 60 years and has been a landlord. Building it's old. It needs some repairs. I get that. Mr. Gasparini has been a long-term supporter of Brantford for many, many years, and the tenants have lived there a long time, and we need to find a balance in here where we protect the tenants and we understand the owner's concern for maintenance of the building. And I think that long-term we will find a solution here that protects everyone, and we move forward an option. But I do also want to say to our housing department, please investigate the opportunity of us buying some of those units so that we could add to our much needed affordable housing stock that we're trying to meet. The mayor's task force on housing suggests we need to do much more, and we're doing it more than most municipalities, as I understand. That's unfortunate that they're not, but we are, and I'd like to see if we could add some of those units to our stockpile, and that would also help with the owner and help with us keep affordable rental units in the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carpenter. And before we call the vote, I just want to thank everyone who's come out today to share your thoughts and your opinions and on this so that we can come forward with a really informed decision based on public engagement. And despite the kerfuffle this morning, I'm told this is not a statutory public hearing, and I should make it very clear that this is a public meeting. So this is a public meeting just for the purpose of hearing from the residents, and I want to thank you all again for coming out. And Madam Clerk, we will call the vote when you're ready.
And item 4.1 carries on a recorded vote of 6-0. Those voting in favor, Mayor Davis, Councillor Sicoli, Celeste, Martin, Carpenter, and Van Tilburg.
Perfect, thank you. And we're going to call a 5-minute recess to allow the individuals who are here for the public meeting to exit and for a refreshment break. Thank you. Okay, let's get started. Okay, we're going to call the meeting back to order. And we are at the point of this meeting where we are at presentations and delegations. So our first delegation is Edward John. That's yourself, I'm assuming? Oh. Okay, we'll flip. That's fine. I have you listed as two separate delegations.
Yeah.
So we'll just give you, is everyone okay with the two delegates presenting together? Seeing no objection, I think we'll even give you 20 minutes for your two presentations. How about that? Okay. So we have Edward John from Landwise and Nick Wood from Corbeil. Yep. All right. 20 minutes inclusive of questions. Oh, which slide deck? Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you. I appreciate the indulgence, Madam Chair, and I appreciate everyone's time and effort. This is, my name is Nick Wood. I'm with Corporate Land Strategies Inc. We're the land use planners for two of the landowners that will be speaking today. I'm joined by Edward Johns today from Landwise. They represent another landowner that's been working together, and staff have brought forward a single staff report to a deal with multiple subdivisions today, but many of the council members will be familiar with our applications and some of the previous delegations that we've had. So before I get into the presentation, I do want to spend a couple minutes of my time. I won't get into Ed's 10 minutes. But I do want to say thank you to a lot of the coordination that's happened to get us to this date, including excellent and appreciated communication with members of council, your worship included, and Councillor Van Tilburg especially as well. We've been meeting with staff and the GRC included for monthly for several years now, and to go through some of the kind of items that have impacted this area: engineering, transportation, stormwater management, civil. And so we've been working with staff considerably, and so a great many thanks to many of the staff that are right behind me today, particularly Nicole Wilmont, Joe Muto, Gary Peever, Alan. It sounds kind of like the Oscars a little bit, but we do greatly appreciate the effort that staff have put forward for this application. So we just wanted to spend some time there. This is also the byproduct of considerable coordination also with external agencies and First Nations, and including the Survivor Secretariat as well. We would not be here if it wasn't for that tremendous amount of work that the landowners have advanced and put a lot of effort into. So just to start there, I'll jump into the slide. So just to clarify, I'm representing Cache Homes. I'm joined by Marcus Gagliardi, who's obviously a very involved developer with the city of Brantford. So that's with the one that I'll start with first. Ed will jump in and talk about Liv, another very valued developer in the city of Brantford, speak to his phase 4 development, and then we'll go into Maltani, again, another developer that I think you're all very familiar with. But just quickly, a little bit of a background. Again, a lot of the members of council are familiar with some of these key dates, but this work that we're presenting today dates back to when, I guess, phase 2 got draft approval in February 2006. But even before that, phase 1 was approved. Prior to that, And so there's been a considerable amount of background work, following those approvals from phase 1 and phase 2. With the comprehensive stormwater management report, which was subsequently approved in November of 2020 and then 2021 by the GRCA. As I mentioned, we've been engaged in several meetings, monthly meetings over the past few years. Subsequent minor changes have occurred to that SBA2 report, but that addendum and that work has been approved just January of 2025. And that's why I think we're here today and the comfort level that I think staff has with bringing all of our applications forward. There is a contribution and indemnity agreement between this SBA2 landowners and the city. It was signed in March 2021 and it's been subsequently extended in the years following. The landowners have advanced what we call a master planning exercise, which included analysis for the broader area on transportation, civil, and stormwater. And we coordinated with staff on that as well. As part of that process, the landowners had a community consultation meeting in June of 2021, which brought in a lot of comments, a lot of feedback from the residents at that time. And the zoning bylaw amendments generally were approved in August of 2023. As I mentioned, this image that you have in front of you is I guess a graphical image of what the ultimate subdivision will look like. I think a couple of the subdivisions and the road network may change a little bit, but Edward can speak to the phases 4 and 5 specifically in his presentation. But this was all been assessed through those joint master planning exercise, servicing, transportation, stormwater. A master site alt permit has also been coordinated with city staff. Constant and reoccurring coordination with the Six Nations, HTI and Survivor Secretariat, as well as, some of the key pieces of the intersection at Erie and Burkhead Lane. And then in addition, how is this legally going to be implemented? So thank you. This graphic is just to kind of break out, some of the phases, because I think that can get a little bit confusing sometimes. But as I mentioned, I'm here just for Riverwalk phases 2 and 3, and that's again owned by Cachet Homes. So this just highlights the property a little bit closer. You see Burkett Lane to phases 2 and 3. To their immediate south, you've got Erie Avenue to its west. East. And then you've got the GRCA trail that travels to the west of phase 3. And that's existing. And some of the existing uses, as I'm sure you're all familiar, we've got agricultural and vacant really for the subject lands for phases 2 and 3. And then you've got the school board located to its northwest and some of the existing low rise residential. This is a graphical plan of the draft plan that's before council today. As you can see, there's a considerable amount of coordination that has gone on with the adjacent properties. So to the north, if you can recall that one context plan is phase 4. We've coordinated the extension of Dover Avenue through their lands to, I guess, the west of the property. That splits up into what we label as Street A and Street B, and both access Burkett Lane. There's approximately 142 single detached dwellings. Both are proposed, or all are proposed with double car garage. As well, access to the existing Dyke Trail is proposed through this application. There is a medium density block. It's envisioned to include 32 units. Back-to-backs and townhouses are at this time proposed. Those will be subject to future applications though. And that's it for the Cachet portion. I'd like to turn it over to the Landwise presentation if that's helpful.
Good morning, Chair, Councillor, members of committee and staff, and members of the public. As Nick pretty well overviewed. In terms of this approach, it is coordinated. We are doing a little bit of a double act. It is unique. I'd like to see ourselves as more Marner and Matthews than Laurel and Hardy, but I suppose time will tell on that approach. So I will do my best to be brief, and I see that the application is up before us. Similar to Nick, extend grateful thanks to all the staff who contributed to this. This has been a coordinated effort. You may get sick of the word coordinated, as it will come up many times through both our presentations, but the value of that coordination is really now being seen and realized through this approach, and obviously through the 4 reports being brought forward by staff. Understanding that Nick has gone through much of this, I'll try to be brief. Beverly is my middle name. So the subject lands are located west of Erie Avenue and north of Burkett Lane. These particular lands are 5.6 hectares or 14 acres in size, and currently has no frontage on a public road. However, it is part of a greater community development known as Riverwalk in the Special Policy Area 2. The lands are previously used as agriculture and currently vacant. The property is surrounded by Doug Snoop's Eagle Community Center, single detached dwellings to the north, and to the east, the Grand Erie District School Board. I won't spend too much time on this, but obviously this is a multidisciplinary approach to these applications, and these are the consultants who have all worked together and engaged on the applications and provided the input necessary to deliver us to where we are today. Once again, I'll quickly go through the agenda. I'll be brief on the official plan and zoning bylaw before you today, being the draft plan of subdivision. We will show some conceptual ideas of the future development proposals, quickly walk you through the supporting studies and the overall Riverwalk Phase 4 development. So the official plan designates the lands as residential. In being so, the low-density residential forms are permitted up to 3 stories in height, and the proposed development will contribute to the city's residential intensification targets. In terms of zoning, I'm sure as many are aware, this was approved previously and is under the zone of the flood holding residential medium density. As approved by council in September 2024, the city of Brantford and zoning bylaw rezoned the subject lands as residential medium density RMR. Before you today, in terms of Riverwalk Phase 4, is the proposal. It consists of 3 blocks, one being a 1.2 hectare public park, the development block of 3.8 hectares, and the Dover Avenue extension. The proposed development currently includes a total of 181 condominium townhouse units, comprising of 58 back-to-back townhouses and 123 standard townhouses accessed from the proposed Dover Avenue extension. The townhouses will have frontage on private roads and will maintain a 3 stories in height. Parking will be provided in excess of the bylaw requirement, comprising of 285 parking spaces, including 104 visitor parking spaces. A 1.27 hectare public park is proposed to the north, as well as a private amenity area within central of the site. In terms of the elevations, these will be a process of the future stages, both through the condo and the site plan stages. This is just an illustration of the street townhouse, and next to that we have the back-to-back. As I mentioned, the applications were supported and reviewed through a number of supporting studies. I won't go through each individual application, but I will provide some quick key findings. The reports demonstrate that servicing is proposed to be in place to appropriately support the development. The transportation impact study forecasts an appropriate movement of vehicles through the dedicated block for Dover. And the tree preservation plan currently proposes additional trees to compensate for those that are removed, indicating approximately 180 trees to be replaced on site. And then finally, the environmental impact statement identified that no species at risk were found on the subject lands, and that would be no impact to the development. Overall, the proposal, in my opinion, contributes to the density and housing goals of the municipality. It does provide that compact and efficient design intended to create a successful, complete community. Obviously, we've taken great care and attention to the floodplain management, coordinated adherence to Special Policy Area 2, and overall represents good planning. And so with that very brief overview, I'll pass it back to Nick, who will take us to the next phase.
Thanks, Edward. The Multany one, if you'll touch, thank you, Madam Chair. They haven't made it easy, but appreciate it.
Sorry, is there another?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Fantastic, thank you. And this presentation is specific to Multany Custom Homes. And it's no accident that the applications that are here before represent the properties that follow the extension of Dover Avenue from the existing cul-de-sac down to to Burkett Lane. So, and those are the critical pieces that I think staff are really interested in delivering to achieve, particularly housing. But as I mentioned, this part of our presentation is for Multany Custom Homes. It's municipal address of 297 Erie Avenue. You can see both parcels are highlighted. But today, just before you is only 297 Erie Avenue, which is the western portion. And the piece that, as you'll see here, is the freehold development that I'll show in the next slide. But Multany West, is, as we refer to it, is located at 297 Erie Avenue, again to the west and immediately south of the existing Dover Avenue cul-de-sac. And then we've got 339 Erie, which is a separate application, also owned by Multany, but not subject to the staff reports here tonight. This is the application, the concept version of the draft plan that's before members of the committee today. What's being proposed here, in addition to the extension of that existing cul-de-sac, is 37 street townhouse units. Access has been coordinated with the existing cul-de-sac, as well as access into the Live Phase 5 lands and Live Phase 4 lands, which Edward just spoke to. And that's been a significant piece over the past few years. Access, if you can make it out to the dike from this proposal, from the Multany West lands, it can be found right at the intersection of the Dover Ave extension and access onto Live Phase 5. So from there, a pathway will travel in a south-west direction to the dike, again, maintaining access and maintaining kind of connection to this part. To echo a lot of what Edward has said, from a provincial planning statement perspective, conformance and consistency has been achieved. Similarly, for the City of Brantford official plan, conformance has been achieved, both in terms of the neighborhood designation that's applicable to some of these lands, as well as achievement of the designated greenfield area overall. Permitted uses include low-rise residential and townhouses. So we believe a lot of what's being proposed across these lands ensures that consistency with the existing housing form, but also integrates some gradual intensification as well. We've evaluated the waterfront master plan as well, and have complied with some of those key components of environment, parks, access, and heritage and culture. In conclusion, and I think a lot of these extend to all of the applications the committee is hearing tonight. We think that the proposed draft plans and subdivisions are consistent with the provincial planning statement, that they are in conformance with the official plan as they achieve conformity with the applicable designation and do not require amendment. The zoning amendments have been previously approved by the city, and the proposed community will deliver a range of residential types and forms that support, again, a range of household sizes and types, and have been planned to ensure access to public infrastructure, such as the existing dike, schools, and then the future public park. The draft plans of subdivision have been prepared in coordination with abutting landowners through extensive technical and planning assessment. to ensure all the matters are planned in a comprehensive and integrated manner. We feel that the draft plans of subdivision are appropriate and represent good planning and should be considered for approval. And that concludes our presentation. Thank you.
Very good. We have Mayor Davis in queue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I realize these are 4 separate plans of subdivision we're looking at, but really it's what I'm trying to do is look at the entirety of the area, including all 4, and trying to get a sense of how everything synchronizes, because that's the way people will live, right? You want them all to synchronize well, and you want the flows to be work well between the different plans of subdivision. So the first thing that I looked at and caused me some concern is the amount of green space. Like there's that one big park that's on top of phase 4. I don't see any parks in phase 2 and 3. And I assume that's because the park in phase 4 is quite large and makes up for it, I assume. That was the rationale. But I don't see how pedestrian traffic, kids, how they readily access the big park from phase 2 and 3. Like they have to go out to the end of the street to Dover Court, and I guess they go up from there. So those just my observation. So one, it's hard to, because I'm not seeing the entire, all 4 of them together in one big map or diagram. But trying to piece them together in my head and seeing them, that's a comment I have. I'm trying to understand the green space, park space, and how that works for, especially the residents in phases 2 and 3. So can you help me on that?
Through the chair to the mayor, and thank you once again for indulging this duo. So certainly through phase 4, recognition was given to the location of the park, the centrality of it, as well as the opportunity for what we would call private amenity space. So the small green area of approximately 600 square meters central to that. But we will be working together through the various subsequent applications to look at coordination in terms of walkways, connectivity, recognizing there's a phasing plan to come forward. So both in terms of timelines and execution. Speaking to that, particularly on phase 4, recognizing there's going to be a new community here that is anticipating utilization and access to that public park. And maybe I'll pass it on to Nick to speak to those subsequent phases.
That's right. Thanks, Edward. Yeah, through you, Madam Chair. The park, yeah, I think as the mayor rightfully noted, and Edward noted as well, is an essential location both to support access from the proposed community of phases 2 and 3 and then Maltani West, but then also provide support and access for existing communities on the east side of Erie Avenue too. So it served as a central location for both the future community and the existing one as well. And it's been long identified through the work that's been going on for the better part of 2 decades to be the main park to support this emerging community as well. Access to it will arrive along both directly from Burkett, from Dover Ave extension, from phases 2 and 3, as well as from the dike. There's a couple connection points that travel down and towards the park.
Yeah, well.
Sorry,
so-
we've well exceeded our time limit. Would you like to extend that?
Yes,
By how long?
10 minutes seems to be the.
Do we have a seconder for that? Counselor Martin? I will call the vote on the time extension.
The motion to extend the time is carried on a recorded vote of 6-0. Those voting in favor, Mayor Davis, Councilor Sepoli, Slats, Martin, Carpenter, and Van Tilburg.
You may continue.
Yeah, just following this theme. So what I'm thinking is, so I'm a family and I'm living in that street A, which is in phase 3, I think. And I'm right at the end, kind of close to Erie Ave. And I want my 9-year-old to go to the park on a bike. And they got to travel all the way down the street, go to Dover Court, which is probably gonna be a pretty busy street, and up in up Dover Court to get up to the park. And the problem is I'm not seeing what I think you see in other neighborhoods that works really well for kids. That's so they can travel to the neighborhood and get to the park without being exposed to a lot of traffic or walkways. I'm not seeing any walkways that would facilitate pedestrian, in particular, the flow of children from the south end up to the park in the middle of the north end. So.
Through you, Madam Chair. I think that's a fair comment. I think approximately the distance from that phase 3 portion is roughly a couple hundred meters. Though the plan has been designed so that the single detached units, which have backyards, and have a little bit more amenity space within the lot, are at the beginning of the subdivision, and then to allow for them to have a little bit more access within the lot to amenity space, so to speak. But understood. Your point's understood.
Thank you. I have Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. There's a gap between the end of the cul-de-sac of the existing Dover and the Mulcahy lands. I'm assuming there's a road allowance there already?
That's right, yeah.
Okay. And because this is in a floodplain area, will there be no basements in these units?
That through you, Madam Chair. That's correct. That's the requirement of the SBA2 policies in the official plan and the GRC as well.
Okay, that's my question. Thank you.
Councillor Carpenter.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to the proponent, then the open space requirement, I'm looking at all 4 developments, and they're well over 100 conditions. One of the conditions, of course, is parkland space. Does each one of the 4 applications meet the requirement for the required open space contribution in land?
That's right. Yeah. So there is, through you, Madam Chair, there has been coordination to ensure the achievement of parkland dedication. I think, that's a combination of both cash and lieu, as well as physical dedication. And Edward, maybe you could shed light on maybe the numbers specifically.
Through you to the councillor, yes. So the formal dedication will be in the phase 4 lands, which is that 1.27 hectare public park. And as Nick mentioned, any deficit based on the densities for that is in accordance with the parkland dedication bylaw, and that will be forming a condition of the draft plan approval. So collectively, there is a dedication. There will be a likelihood of cash in lieu, as well as individual applications, and particularly within our phase, private amenity areas provided.
Is there, thank you. Is there an opportunity for the agreement of both developers to build the park first and actually have you build the park?
I think that through you, Madam Chair, I think that may be that's definitely something that the landowner base would be okay with. I think that would take a little bit of coordination and discussion with city staff as well, though.
Yeah, I think we've done that successfully in Shelters Lane at one point, and we've achieved a very large park there. This is a very large park. What is the size of this park?
Through the chair to the council, at 1.2 hectares.
Okay, could you give the
older
fellow in the acres?
I'm gonna look at Nick. So old.
I can't do the conversion off the top of my head. I apologize.
Okay, I'll find it. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, that concludes the questions and whatnot for you. So thank you so much. Oh, sorry. Didn't see you. Councilor Van Tilburg.
Thank you, Chair. I believe in the past, Councillor Carpenter's made referrals to some of the townhouse type styles that don't allow access into the backyards. Were those issues addressed, or does it remain the same plan as before?
Through the chair to the councillor, we had a fruitful discussion at the zoning stage, and I recall that very well. We continue to explore that rear access issue, both from the condo application, which will be the next phase, which will be before you, to implement the concepts, and we are certainly aware of it and continue to evaluate the best means to secure that access, whether it's easement, whether it's changes in terms of actual common element areas, or a combination. We will be bringing that forward in the future application stage.
Thank you.
And I double checked and I'm now certain that that is the end of question period for you. So thank you so much. You can have a seat and we're going to move forward and we'll be discussing this shortly. So staff do have a presentation for us. Again, a little bit unorthodox, but we're going to move forward to our items for consideration. And I think we have Nor. Would that be you, Nor, in the great suit? Perfect.
That's me.
This is Nor's first presentation to council, so I look forward to your presentation. We'll give you 10 minutes.
Thank you.
So good morning, Madam Chair and committee members. Josh Graham here, Senior Project Manager in Development Planning. So I just wanted to take an opportunity prior to the presentation to introduce Intermediate Planner Noor Hermes. So thanks for that opportunity. Go ahead, Noor.
Thank you. First, can we get the presentation up, please?
It's coming. The anticipation.
Thank you. Good morning, Madam Chair, committee members, and members of the public. My name is Noor Hermes, and I'm a development planner with the City of Brantford, here to present planning staff's recommendations regarding draft plan of subdivision applications for lands in Ward 5, located at 91 and 101 Burkett Lane and 297 Erie Avenue, listed as item 6.11 on today's agenda. The purpose of the draft plan of subdivision applications is to facilitate the development of 360 new residential units consisting of single detached and townhouse dwellings, as well as new roads and a new neighborhood park to be developed over 4 separate phases. Phase 1 saw the registration of the existing 12 single detached dwelling lots fronting on the west side of Erie Avenue, north of Burkett Lane. Riverwalk West Phase 2 is regarding 101 Burkett Lane, shown in blue on the location map. These lands are owned by Cache Developments and the agent is Corbett Land Strategies. Phase 3 is in relation to the south end of 91 Burkett Lane, shown in green on the location map. These lands will be transferred to Cache Development when the consent application is fully approved. The owner's agent is Corbett Land Strategies. Phase 4 is for the north end of 91 Burkett Lane. These lands are shown in red and owned by Live Development, and the agent is Landwise. The 4th phase applies to the lands municipally addressed as 297 Erie Avenue, shown in purple. The owner is Multani Custom Homes Limited, and the agent is Corbett Land Strategies. The subject lands are located in the area generally bound by River Road and the GRCA dike system to the west, Baldwin Avenue to the north, Erie Avenue to the east, and Burkett Lane to the south. Collectively, the lands are approximately 15 hectares or 35 acres in area and are vacant of any buildings or structures, containing open fields and sparse tree cover. The surrounding areas include a mix of existing residential and neighborhoods. The surrounding areas include a mix of existing residential neighborhoods and institutional uses such as the Ducks Nooks Eagle Place Community Center and the Grand Erie District School Board offices, and Madonna Della Libra Catholic Elementary School and Bellevue Public School, also in close proximity. Beyond the Dike Trail to the west and south is a protected natural area with fields towards the Grand River. Here is a site photo looking north towards Phase 2 lands from Burkett Lane. This is another image looking northeast towards Phase 3 lands from Burkett Lane. This image is of Phases 2 and 3 looking east from the Dike Trail. The existing single detached dwellings forming Phase 1 can be seen across the open field. The image on the left is of Phase 4 looking northeast from the Dike Trail. And the image on the right is looking north towards the phase for 297 Erie Avenue from the Dike Trail. I will now describe the development proposal for each phase. Riverwalk West Phase 2 consists of 115 single-detached dwellings fronting on the extension of Dover Avenue and 2 new local streets defined as Street A and Street B. The 2 new streets will connect to Burkett Lane. Phase 3 consists of 27 single-detached dwellings fronting on Street A and the extension of Dover Avenue, and a medium-density townhouse block, roughly 0.64 hectares or 1.68 acres in area. Phase 3 also includes a 6-meter buffer block adjacent to the Dyke Trail. Phase 4 proposes 181 common element condominium townhouse dwelling units, consisting of 123 standard block townhouses and 58 back-to-back townhouses. Phase 4 also includes the extension of Dover Avenue, as well as a new neighborhood park, approximately 1.27 hectares in area or 3.13 acres. 297 Erie Avenue includes 37 3-story street townhouses, which will front a new street and Dover Avenue. The proposals in each phase conform to the Ontario Planning Act and Provincial Planning Statement by promoting infill and redevelopment with varied housing types and ensuring adequate housing is available for a broad range of social, physical, and economic needs. In the official plan, the lands are designated residential and are also a designated greenfield area, which permits single-detached dwellings and townhouse dwellings. The proposals consider and address the need for adequate infrastructure, including water, wastewater, stormwater, and utilities in conformity with the city and GRCA standards. The lands are also within Special Policy Area 2, which consists of areas of the floodplain within the city that are not fully developed and where some risk of flooding is assumed. As outlined in the official plan, Special Policy Area 2 requires additional considerations regarding flood risk management and stormwater planning. Through collaboration between the developer-based landowner group, the GRCA, and the City of Brantford, a stormwater management strategy for this area was developed, which now allows the subject draft plan and subdivision applications to advance. Through detailed engineering design, the proposed subdivisions will need to satisfy the city and GRCA prior to any implementation of the stormwater management strategy. In 2023 and 2024, Brantford City Council approved site-specific rezoning applications for each of the proposed subdivisions under zoning bylaw 160-90. Brantford City Council then approved the city's new comprehensive zoning bylaw 124-24 on September 24th, 2024, which is now in full force and effect. The approved site-specific zoning amendments, which were made under zoning bylaw 160-90, continue to apply and have been carried forward into zoning bylaw 124-24. At the time of the approval of the zoning bylaw amendment applications, a holding provision was placed on the subject subdivisions. Prior to the registration of any of the draft plans, the applicant is required to satisfactorily address the requirements of the holding provision. The proposed draft plan of subdivisions are otherwise in compliance with the approved site-specific zoning applied to each respective phase. In support of the applications, a series of technical studies and reports have been completed. These include the list demonstrated on the screen. In conclusion, the development proposals conform to the policies outlined in the Planning Act, the Provincial Planning Statement, the official plan, and zoning bylaw. The proposed development in all phases support the intensification of underutilized lands and contribute to the development of a complete community within the settlement area. The proposals provide missing middle housing and help meet minimum targets for density and intensification, while also addressing floodplain management through adherence to the Special Policy Area 2 guidelines. By adhering to these guidelines, the proposed subdivisions are designed to comply with specific environmental regulations aimed at managing climate-related risks, specifically flooding. The proposals seek to minimize environmental impacts, protect current and future residents, and promote urban development while ensuring adaptability to changing climatic conditions. Planning staff are supportive of each draft plan of subdivision and recommend approval, subject to the plan of subdivision conditions attached as appendices to the report. That concludes my presentation. I am happy to answer any questions. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much. And we do have some questions, beginning with Councillor Van Tilburg.
Thank you, Chair. Through you. I'm
I'm actually pretty comfortable for phases 2 and 3. But when I look at the entire project, a lot has changed in 25 years. A lot's changing in the development in Brantford. So when these concepts first came forward, the Brantford Commons market was relatively new and a thriving market. And the future of the Brantford Commons market will not be as accessible to this growth and increase, which would be motor vehicle traffic to the Commons. The Commons is going the other way with massive apartment buildings and less access for those that wish to do the shopping. So when I look at this and all these people coming in, they're going to need amenities such as that. I'm asking you, because it would not have been fair to ask the applicants, what is out there in the nearby area in our plan to address what will for surely be the needs of the people who buy homes in this area?
To clarify, your question is the amount of parkland available in the surrounding area?
Not parkland, amenities for retail, consumer shopping, grocery stores, purchasing, things that are done at the Brantford Commons, which is the most vibrant economic hub for people living in the Eagle Place area. We're adding more people. There's going to be less access to that property, so we have to have a plan to say you can't go there because it will be absolutely inconvenient. What is in our plans? Like, we have adjacent lands and stuff. Is there something in there for the growth of retail, commercial sector?
Thanks. I'll defer that to the Director of Planning.
Good morning, Alan Waterfield, Director of Planning. Yes, with respect to other opportunities for commercial development in addition to what we see at Brantford Commons, which will continue to have commercial opportunities for people to attend to. We do have the intensification corridor designated along Erie Avenue, which provides for a broad range of uses, mixed use, which would include opportunities for commercial and retail to locate along that street, perhaps revitalize some of the existing commercial that you see along Erie Avenue that is struggling. This development perhaps will provide more market that would support commercial businesses within those structures. So there is opportunity for more retail to come in along Erie Avenue.
Thank you.
And we've exceeded our time limit. We will have opportunity to ask questions once we get this on the floor. So I'm not going to ask for a time extension at this point. So moving forward, thank you so much for the presentation. I do require someone to move in second that we put this on the floor, that the draft plan of subdivision for discussion. Moved by Mayor Davis, seconded by Councillor Martin. We now have that on the floor, and I'm going to go right to you, Mayor Davis, who was patiently waiting in queue.
Thank you. I do have some questions for staff. First of all, coming out of Councillor Van Tilburg's comments or questions, with I call it the fresh code development, is the amount of commercial space in what's been proposed so far, is it being increased or decreased compared to what's currently in place?
There is opportunity for it to be increased. I don't know the specifics of the proposal to know exactly how much they have proposed there, but
Yeah, 'cause my
it
memory is,
potentially
I thought
could
it
be more.
substantially increased the amount of commercial space. And that's one question I have. I guess maybe somebody can answer that for me while you're going. But my main concern about this is the amount of green space. And I totaled up, it's a total of 34.4 acres in all 4 subdivisions. And the amount of green space is about 3 acres. And that's a rate of 8.72%, or 1 acre of green space for 120 units. What are the standards we normally use?
The standard for parkland dedication for land conveyance in the Planning Act that we would follow is um, if 5% of the land area as opposed to 8 that is being provided in this development.
Well, that's what the Planning Act calls for. What is our aspirational goal to ensure a quality of life? What do we as a city generally expect the percentage of green space to be in a typical subdivision such that we're seeing here?
The amount that we have set in the parkland dedication bylaw is the 5% for residential for land conveyance. We're not allowed to exceed that.
Okay. What about so 3 acre park is really not that big. That would be considered a kind of a smaller neighborhood park in comparison to other parks we have through the city. What about the pedestrian flows to this big park that is going to be there for the 360 living residential units? Doesn't seem to be a lot of walkways that would encourage facilitate pedestrian bicycle flow to the park.
Through the mayor to the committee, we're anticipating that people will be utilizing the Dyke Trail to move alongside Dover Avenue, so they won't necessarily have to be walking on the sidewalks. And through the conditions of draft plan approval, we'll be ensuring that the developments will provide connections to that trail through phase
but to
3
get
of
to
the
Dyke,
development.
that's in the far west end. They're gonna have to go down, depending where they live, they'll have to walk down or ride down or bicycle down a fairly long street, then cross a busy street to get to the Dyke. Does that make sense?
There'll be the option of the Dyke Trail where one will have to cross. There'll also be a sidewalk on the other side of Dover Avenue. We'll also be looking at connections through future development in the area, the remaining Multany lands. That will provide some opportunity for additional walkways or access from Erie Avenue into the park as well.
That's my question.
Thank you. Councillor Carpenter.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To staff, the phase 4 development, which is where the park is, I can't see any diagram. I keep searching for it, but looking for a diagram that shows where the development is, how as it borders the park. Have you got any diagrams that you could show me where the development application is going to border the park, where the housing units are, that sort of thing?
Through the chair, there is that slide in the PowerPoint presentations that showed the full extent of phase 4.
Yeah, could you bring that up for me? Why just I can't, it's not in my package.
Yep. Phase 4. So that's slide 7.
Yeah,
Or slide.
It doesn't show me the houses where the housing lots. I want to know if the park is going to have open space open to a street. That's my concern.
Yes, through the chair to the councillor. Yes, it will.
So the whole length of the park will be open to a street that runs across the frontage of it. Is that my understanding?
It's across the frontage of the Dover Avenue extension, as well as a new road that will be constructed.
So two sides of the park will have frontage.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. That answers my concern. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, seeing no further questions or anyone in line to discuss, we'll call the vote on this.
Could I ask for a separation?
Yeah, we can certainly do that. That's
If
in
we
order.
could separate each clause A, B, C, and D. And the reason I'm suggesting such a thing is, I'm very confident in A and B, and I've heard some questions regarding some of the other issues going forward, and I know we're gonna get those answers probably fairly soon, but I'd rather wait till I have those answers, so I just want to vote accordingly.
Well, separation is always in order. So Madam Chair will call the vote separately. Or sorry, Madam Clerk, not Madam Chair. That's Are you speaking
Can I
to the
say, yeah?
separation?
I get two speaking options, don't
Yeah, you just, yeah, you have to, I'm
I
not
did, I
psychic,
just
so,
put it up.
okay. Go for it.
Yeah, I think you know what my concern is, and so I'm feeling a little bit ambivalent. I understand there's been a lot of work and a lot of synchronized planning by separate landowners, which is challenging. And also, of course, staff put in years of work, board counselors, various public meetings, neighborhood meetings. But I remain concerned about this, the flow of children to the park and facilitating that. I did have a concern about the amount of green space, but it's probably around 8 or 9% of the available land space. So that's pretty good. It's in excess of the 5% statutory. But I am concerned about the flow through. So I'm going to have to think about this. I mean, I'm going to vote for it today, but I'll have to consider this further prior to the vote being taken at council later this month, assuming it comes to us later this month. So, but definitely have a concern about pedestrian flows within the entire landmass. And I would also appreciate prior to council, can we be given a diagram or a map that shows all 4 properties and what's planned, so we can see, and rather than having to go into 4 different planned subdivision, we can see it all together, see how it flows. Thank you, Madam Chair, for playing both.
And Councillor Carpenter, second speaking opportunity.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It appears to me that these applications have well over 100 conditions. To staff, is that the record for conditions? I thought I set the record in Pace Avenue. We had 65, but 107. There's a lot of conditions here. If all those conditions are agreed upon by the proponents for all, from 107 for phase Erie Ave and 103 for phase 3, 108 for phase 4, are those all been agreed to?
Through the chair, this area encompasses a large swath of land that required comprehensive planning between various landowners, and it had to take into consideration official plan policies. So given all those considerations and the history of these lands, it was determined that the amount of conditions specifically to address the servicing and stormwater were necessary for these files.
Is this very much like block planning?
Yes, through the chair, yes, it is.
Okay, so and the proponents have agreed to share their portions of it. There's a stub that goes off of the Erie Ave, 297 Erie Ave. I think it heads. Gosh, you have to give me. I think it's east. Is that for the future land that's to the east of that? I have my directions right.
Through the chair.
Road stub off Dover Ave.
West of 297 Erie Avenue is phase 5.
Oh, and that's not before us.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that.
Phase 5 is not before us. That comes in the
Phase
future.
5 is not part of these applications. No, it's not.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Gary, I noticed you had something to contribute.
Yeah, through the chair, to the councilors, Gary Peaver, Manager of Development Engineering. In regards to the amount of conditions, yes, this is probably one of our higher amount of conditions for subdivisions. However, there's quite a bit of complexities as they are separate applications as well, tying it to the infrastructure. A lot of the infrastructure has to be constructed across the phases together. So a lot of these conditions are essentially tripled up. Depending on which developer moves first, the infrastructure would have to be constructed across it. So that's why you're seeing a lot of additional conditions, but they're actually duplicated. So once one developer clears a certain condition, ultimately the other developers have it cleared as well. In regards to the distance to the park from phase 2 and 3, through the Parks and Master Plan Addendum that was presented to COW this week, one of the recommendations was having parks located within 500 meters walking distance to many of these units. And through this design, that is closely achieved through phase 2 and 3. It will be approximately 500 meters walking distance along the municipal sidewalk to this park.
And thank you. That was my question I was gonna ask, actually. There's sidewalks appropriately laid out throughout all of the phases, correct?
Yeah, through the chair to yourself, there will be municipal sidewalks along all the proposed municipal roadways shown on phase 4, Multani, and 2 and 3.
Okay, so a child wanting to go to the park could simply walk on a sidewalk and get there.
Through the chair, that is correct.
Okay, thank you. Seeing no one else in the queue to ask questions or speak, we will call the vote, Madam Clerk, and we'll separate those items.
So we'll start with clause A. And clause A carries on a recorded vote of 6-0. Those voting in favor, Mayor Davis, Councillor Sokoli, Slats, Martin, Carpenter, and Van Tilburg. Clause B is now open. Those voting in favor of clause B, Mayor Davis, Councillor Sokoli, Slats, Martin, Carpenter, and Van Tilburg. And clause C. And clause C carries on a recorded vote of 5-1. Those voting in favor, Mayor Davis, Councillor Sokoli, Celeste, Martin, and Carpenter. Those opposed, Councillor Van Tilburg. And clause D. And clause D carries on a recorded vote of 5-1. Those voting in favor, Mayor Davis, Councillor Sokoli, Celeste, Martin, Carpenter. Those opposed, Councillor Van Tilburg.
Okay, and this concludes the business of this month's planning meeting. There are no resolutions, no notice of motions, and we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.